Hello and welcome to Radio Free Nintendo. It is March 21st, 2024, and this is episode, we just talked about it, was A67? A67.
Yeah, I think so.
I'm James Jones. I'm joined today by John Lindemann.
It's great to be here, James.
Guillaume Vayette.
Hello, hello.
And Mr. Greg Lay.
Ahoy, hoy, everyone.
This is a podcast where we talk about video games, and sometimes we do your email. We're going to do your email first this week because we've been delaying on doing email and having long new business segments. So, listener mail. We'll start the show right now. Emails, you send them to rfn@nintendoworldreport.com. That's rfn@nintendoworldreport.com. Also, the music had a late start in this episode because I've cut this like a news promo by accident and realized it would be very funny to put the music after I introed everybody. So welcome to the show. We're going to start off your email, and I'm going to read the first one because I didn't queue up an order for emails, and I've got it in front of me already. Bikonite writes, well, he wrote a long preamble about his feelings about Xenoblade Chronicles 2, and it's not germane to the email, so We've read it, but we're not going to include it here. But his question. Nintendo has recently, to my knowledge, been avoiding discussing who develops what games. At least before the game is released. Why would they do this? Are they worried about these companies gaining too much of a following as to overthrow their ultimate brand? Yes, so this is probably driven by the realization that Princess Peach Showtime is being developed by Goodfeel, which was originally scraped out of some file name standards that were reminiscent of Goodfeel. But since the game has come out and we can see the credits, we now also know that the game's director is the president of Goodfeel, which is a pretty strong hint that his company may be working on this game, or worked, I guess, in the past tense. So, gentlemen, why does Nintendo not name their teams anymore, first or internal or external for the most part, and identify who's working on what?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting. It does seem like it's been downplayed more. I mean, some of this, I guess, is because, like, in the past, maybe there'd be more. I'm not that you do have some sort of analogous features for your high-profile first-party games here and there, but we don't have as much kind of the kind of developer interview stuff as we did when Iwata Asks was a feature of Nintendo's kind of promotional material for a long time. And so, that would provide, oftentimes very, kind of in-depth discussions with, if they were doing something in, collaboration with an outside party, you'd get not only kind of insight from them, but usually some sort of like history of like everything they've ever done with Nintendo, what paths they cross with. I mean, I remember the like Sin and Punishment 2, when that came out, you got quite a lot of stuff about the original Sin and Punishment development, as an extension of that and all. So they weren't shying away from, this is treasure. We worked with them on this original game this many years ago and all that kind of stuff. And I guess, in that case, that's part really how they were trying to sell that game, which is, never going to be easy, is the developer pedigree. But yeah, recently, I would imagine, if I had to guess, it's not so much a question of, and maybe I'm being charitable, but not so much a question of wanting to, kind of not have, development studios get their own kind of profile boosted too much, and they would become too expensive to retain in the future or something. I would wonder if perhaps this might be based on data that they'd kind of built up from previous periods of time where they could track how much this stuff may or may not have influenced sales, whether there's a feeling that, you know, if you talk too much about the developer being it from the outside, that people think of it as a kind of lesser game, you know, some sort of, it's been farmed out, it's been spun off, it's not a real Mario game, or it's not a real Zelda game, or whatever, you know, if it's connected to one of those big series. And then, you know, they're less likely to buy it as a result. So they want to be more coy about these things and just like, oh, no, it's all Nintendo games. They're all worth buying. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah. Oh, well, I don't know. I think part of it is the fact that they used to be ran by a developer, and now they're run by an accountant. So, Shintaro Furukawa, his background is accounting, whereas Satoru Iwata was a developer. So I think it would be natural that he would want developers to get their just due.
He wasn't just a developer.
He was the developer, pretty much.
Well, he wasn't just that. He was a HAL developer.
Yes.
So he was from one of these outside companies that that the email is talking about.
Yeah,
I think some of it, and this is pure developer brain kicking in at this point. It's worse. This is lead developer brain kicking in. So, fuck. Resource fungibility, which John, I'm sure you've heard all about in all kinds of management
that's what I was
meetings.
thinking too. The ability to move teams around to different projects without the public perception that those projects would suffer from having a different team on them.
Right. Or that they're in trouble because
Yes.
I'm moving a team off of this. No, that we're moving them because their resources would be best served here for right now.
Yeah, almost similar to really the days of the Famicom, where you would have teams shuffle off of different projects, and it wasn't like you didn't have these sacred cow teams where this team has to do this franchise or we're screwed kind of thing, where they could really shuffle things around.
But like as a developer, like there is a real value in having the ability to say, we have a project that it's not in trouble. It's not in trouble. Like if management left us alone and we just kept going, we'd get where we mean to go. Mm-hmm. But we're not going to get there in the amount of time management wants us to get there. And it's not because we're in trouble. It's because they want it faster than is physically possible for us to deliver. Mm-hmm. And there is a value in being able to say, well, if you can get me assistance with this stuff, like this section of work, I can get it to you sooner. And management saying, it is more valuable for me to take resources from this project, Project B, and put them on Project A because I value getting Project A in production more than I value getting Project B in production. And so, like, having the ability to shift resources around between projects makes it hard to say, well, this team worked on it, because what is the team? Like, Nintendo already talked about this when they moved to having when they did the reorg around the time Switch came out. Mm-hmm. Where they renamed their internal development unit, they restructured all the teams. There's only one platform to write code for at this point. They internally they've done this. Now, obviously, studios that exist outside of headquarters are just for geographic reasons different. So you have your Monolith stuff because they've got the two offices. HAL is in the building with them. Isn't it HAL that's in Nintendo's building? Nintendo's their landlord. So like there's a certain amount of like these second party ones where even Nintendo's not the owner, like they're in the fucking building. Like there's a certain amount of like, yeah, you don't work for us, but it's like you're indentured servants.
Yeah, we're just down the hall, so.
But I mean,
need some help, let us know.
Yeah, we've seen it. Like, I mean, Mario Kart 8 is a great example. Mario Kart 8 needed to get the fuck out. So, like, think about the teams who made tracks for Mario Kart 8. It includes Retro. How much experience did Retro have?
That was
with kart
definitely
racing?
true of Mario Kart 7. I can't remember if it was
7.
Mario Kart, if there was something analogous with Mario Kart, because obviously it was similar circumstances in terms of the Wii U was looking dire. I'm sure they got Mario Kart 8 out as fast as they could, and you know, it sold astonishingly well considering how unpopular Wii U was, but it, you know, it couldn't help turn it around the way that Mario Kart 7 did. But yeah, definitely Retro swung to help get that over the line as fast as they could, and they were ultimately successful. But yeah, I mean, it's a fair point there. But it does seem like there's been just recently, as you mentioned, the Switch era is something different from the past because there's been sort of unprecedented its integration of their own internal developers, more than ever because of the end of discrete systems, console and portable. And they've been aiming to make these things more interchangeable and more so that they can swing resources where they're needed, based on what games need the resources. But just the most recent sort of couple of years maybe, or 1 year, it feels like they've been so quiet. Like Super Mario RPG was similar. When the developer, I think it was Arte Piazza, or so, I think is their name. They'd done a bunch of Dragon Quest remakes. I think really had been there, or maybe just other Dragon Quest games as well. But certainly some of those remakes on DS and so forth. So it's like a completely natural team to be doing it, really. You know what I mean? Because of that, Dragon Quest is more on the Enix side, but still, Square Enix remake. That like it makes sense, but yeah, we didn't know that for quite some time either, and it does seem like it's perhaps because so many of these in this past year or so have been connected to the Mario franchise, perhaps it's because of that connection of like, okay, we don't want, again, people to think, oh, this isn't like a real Mario game, because obviously the core Mario games sell so much, don't they? They sell enormous quantities, and then the spin-offs will sell a few million. And maybe they think somehow if we just, play it cool and like try and, sort of diminish any sort of, putting any kind of these things at arm's length by having it up front that it's this developer and this genre or whatever, that somehow they can close that gap in sales and that they'll sell a little closer to the, the Odysseys and, new Super Mario Brothers of the world.
I mean, it is probably to some degree a perception is reality thing too. Of like, we want people to see this game and think it is Nintendo quality, and putting another name on there might confuse the matter. Like they like Princess Peach Showtime. It doesn't necessarily they haven't been talking about it in the pre-release cycle that Good Feel's involvement. But I mean, if you see the credits, it's pretty clear that Good Feel's involved in this game. So it's not like they're not giving the people credit. It's just it's not been part of the PR cycle for the game. Now, I think some of that can be described as the fact the PR cycle for Princess Peach Showtime has been pretty muted.
Well, and also, I mean, again, the kind of game that it is, it may be a case of, like, look, we don't really think focusing at all on the developer pedigree is something that would really the market we're looking to sell to would respond to, because were some of these people
weren't alive when some of these
were
games
they
came
alive
out,
and capable of using a joypad when Crafted World came out? Perhaps not. So I mean, it does make sense, and it is tied to the wider Mario franchise, so they just might say, oh, it's us. The Mario people, we're making it. Just have that.
And it's like Epic Yarn was in 2010, or 2011 over here. So the people who played that aren't old enough now probably to have kids old enough for Princess Peach Showtime.
But they're definitely too old for Princess Peach Showtime based on that demo.
Yeah,
I think the other thing is, if we were to flip it, like the one where I remember them speaking about Good Feel specifically, really giving Good Feel like the shine in it was Yoshi, the Wii U Yoshi game.
Woolly World, the first time they
Woolly
did
World.
it,
yeah, because they had that long E3 video they did.
It was the direct video where they're in the kind of arts and crafts store, right?
But all of the E3 videos, or all the videos in that direct, were long because Nintendo didn't have a lot to talk about.
Well, don't forget, with the Wii U, they pretty much gave away the store with the Desperation direct, right? So that, which included the very earliest look at that game, but that wasn't the really long look at it because it was super early at that point.
That was basically like a sizzle reel.
It basically went away for for a long time because they almost, by the sound of it was I think was it Kit and Krista who left Nintendo, basically confirmed this after the fact, that they fired everything they had, literally everything. There was nothing that they left unsaid in that. Anything, no matter how far away it was basically. So, yeah, when you had subsequent directs, it was kind of like, okay, well, yeah, there's almost nothing, even if it was several months later, you couldn't really like have that much that was genuinely new. So you had to kind of string things out. That's where they were.
And those directs got really experimental. Like there was a lot of video of like showing people talking in weird settings, and like here's video of Iwata in a futuristic looking house that's definitely not his, but we're gonna pretend like it's his. Reggie defining the word competition. That was a thing that happened in a direct. Like that absolutely happened. Now, I think that might have been a Switch direct, but it was very early. Like they were still in that Wii U brain. And so there is a certain amount of just like, this is dumb. Why are we doing this? Well, we're doing this because it's the only thing we can do. That's why we're doing it. We're spending all this time talking about the publisher, developer, because we don't have the game to talk about yet because they haven't built it. Even that Yoshi Woolly World demo video was relatively short on gameplay content because it was probably still pretty rough. Because that game came out, didn't it come out spring the next year? Like I want to say that was the summer direct, and then it came out like early next.
Yeah, I mean, it felt like quite a late Wii U game, although to sort of reference that, I'll say it got late early with Wii U, didn't it? So it could be easy to jumble these things up in your head.
So like I don't know how much of it is naturally they don't want to talk about these companies, but they more or less had to. Or it's a change in thinking. Like it could be the opposite way around. Like this is getting them back to where they'd rather be.
Yeah. Like they're in a position of strength, so it's just like, hey, let the brand sell it. Because we know the brand's selling, all these other games that fall under that umbrella. So just let that do the talking, and we don't have to like work really hard to try and kind of convince you because we're in such a powerful position as it is. But I suppose it is important to distinguish this issue from the other issue of like where they haven't had the original developer credits in remakes and stuff, which is pretty shoddy. But but that is, like you said, that's a separate issue from it's quite clear if you were to read the credits of something like Super Mario RPG remake or Peach's Showtime, like you're gonna know who made it in that at least. There is that.
Yeah, and I wonder also if they don't view it as like, this is a Good Feel game. Like they view it as, yeah, Good Feel worked on this game, but we led the development. Like it was our people overseeing this game's design, and Good Feel was doing the implementation. This isn't a Good Feel game. This is a Nintendo game that Good Feel wrote code for, did art for, and contributed to, if that makes sense. Like, because like If I design it, like, again, I'm speaking from a software standpoint. If I design a system and put, a ton of research and design work and analysis into it, and I put the specs together, I write it all up and say, this is how it needs to be built. And then we hand it to a staff aug company and they implement my design. I'm still going to say that's my project. I built that thing, even though I didn't write the code, because it's my design. It's my plan. It's my layout. It's my analysis. It's all my concepts, my ideas. So like, it's entirely possible that like Nintendo feels like, well, our producer was and the creative leads, maybe they were Nintendo people. It's like, well, no, it's our game. It's not a Good Feel game. It's a game that Good Feel worked on. So I would be called a Good Feel game. Like there is like, what's the balance there, and like who's the ideator and who's doing development. And that's also a perception is reality thing. Nintendo might view themselves as the ideator for all of it, and Good Feel people might disagree. But one of those companies signed the check, and I'll don't think you need 2 guesses to figure out which one I'm talking about. So maybe that's more of the thinking. But there has been some movement, but like this has been a thing with Monolith forever. Monolith's been contributing to Zelda games since back in Skyward Sword. I don't know if Nintendo's ever mentioned Monolith's involvement. I mean, besides in the credits. But like, you could play Breath of the Wild and you instantly knew if you played Xenoblade X, oh, Monolith's been here. I can see it in how this world is laid out. Now, Nintendo obviously did more with their world than Monolith's ever done with their world, but there are lessons from Xenoblade X that are visible and tangible and like speak to you intimately if you've played that game when you're going through Breath of the Wild. And yeah, if you look at the credits, Monolith's all over it, but Nintendo never brought them out and said, introducing Monolith Soft for their involvement in this game. But I mean, they've been the unsung soldiers since their acquisition. They contributed so much. Even with Smash, when, you know, outside parties basically built Smash. It was Bandai, right? Namco Bandai?
For the 3DS Wii U games and Ultimate, yeah. I mean, like, I think we've mentioned this on the show before. Like, there is a subdivision of Namco Bandai that exists pretty much exclusively to work with Nintendo. Like that, right. That is their whole existence. And yet, I don't know how often they're going to get explicitly called out for their work, in like marketing, especially going forward. I assume, a fair amount of the stuff that they've been working on is stuff we don't even know about yet.
Like, Sora is basically one guy.
Yeah, there's like... There was there's Sakurai's Sora, like kind of almost like it's like a holding company or something, but then he did make a sort of Sora development team specifically for Kid Icarus Uprising that I think was then kind of wound down like immediately. It was always just like a one project thing. So yeah, for a while there were actually 2 Soras. There was his personal corporate entity and then the development group that he assembled to make Kid Icarus Uprising.
Yeah, so it's like there is a certain amount of, Nintendo likes to talk about individuals though, like, and we haven't done that so much with the celebrity developer. It's been a little while, and I wonder if some of that is a conscious decision that it's worth winding. I mean, they did it with Splatoon. They've done it a couple times now with Splatoon. I wonder, and maybe part of it is just Fujibayashi for Zelda, for example, just isn't particularly. Like, I don't know that he's got any particular camera presence, if that makes sense. Like, Aonuma has a very weird energy that translates to camera. It's still weird and goofy, but, like, it works. It works well. Miyamoto has an energy that works. It's a bit impish. It works well. It goes well with the Nintendo image, if that makes sense. It's Miyamoto's energy can be a bit playful and a little bit, like I said, a little childlike sometimes. Now, how much of that's played up, how much of that's real, I don't know. But it works well for what they want to project as their outward face. Maybe the current crop of creators just don't do that well. Koizumi's obviously got a shitload of media training because he was the face of the company for a while there during Switch. But yeah, I mean, they've always wanted to push people more than like subunits in companies. It's always been like, here's the face of that subunit talking to you. It's not like, here's EAD Division 2. Or very rarely would they ever use that kind of like explicit naming. They would say like, here's the producer of this game. We're going to sit down and talk. And you mentioned it, like with Iwata's passing, the Iwata Asks sort of dematerialized. So it's possible that just like, the players they have now aren't well suited to the task of being a spokesperson.
Well, I mean, they've made an effort to try and recreate some of that Iwata-esque type of feel for some of the very biggest, like Super Mario Bros. Wonder, for instance. I think had something already talked a lot about the creative process in that and all that, but of course that is something that's pretty much all internal. I'm sure there's a certain amount of outside because developing any game these days is such a sprawling task for a major company, but but it seems like the creative effort was pretty much all in-house there. But yeah, that's the thing. It just felt like in the Iwata-esque days you'd get that sort of treatment for a much broader cross-section of the games they were publishing.
Absolutely.
And you know, like I said, he always had these interesting connections about, you know, we worked on this together, you know, 20 years ago or whatever. So you'd get these kind of sort of positive externalities, these kind of additional like nuggets of information about Nintendo history that weren't directly germane to the product at hand. That it really feels like that is never coming back.
I'm trying to remember which one it was where they deep dove into the Wii prototypes. Because there was one of those Iwata asks where they started talking about the prototype Wii controllers they had for GameCube, and then that became like a weird digression. I just can't remember which one it was. But yeah, like that was very interesting because they would have 4 or 5 people at the table who very rarely was it somebody this is their first project. Usually it's somebody who had worked their way up in the company. And some of that comes from the fact that Nintendo's stability in terms of like employee retention is unprecedented in the industry. Just unbelievably high levels of retention. That, you know, maybe there is a certain amount of like, there's enough tribal knowledge there that you could put that table together and it'd be good. Now, I mean, they are still going out there and having some devs talk. Like they gave a GDC talk just this week about Tears of the Kingdom.
And more stuff about Super Mario Brothers Wonder as well. Yeah, so that's the thing. Again, It's those really big kind of, games that they sort of seem most comfortable talking about, which I mean, certainly hold a great deal of interest, you know, because the games that so many people have played and enjoyed and admire, and yet equally, you know, I mean, how much do they actually need it in this game? I mean, it's still interesting stuff, of course, but that is what was nice about Iwata Asks, is that you got that breadth and depth.
Yeah, and the GDC one's interesting because, of course, they're talking to other game developers. Like that's the target audience. So by having that conversation and by going out there and with the Tears of the Kingdom stuff, they were talking about how the world worked and how they solved some of the challenges. And there was this whole conversation about how, like, rather than recording a sound for the sound of a wagon going over 20 different surfaces, each element of the game has a property about its sound qualities, and the interplay of a wheel and wet ground and stuff like that interacting generated a sound. And your geographic position, like, oh, you're behind a wall. Well, the wall muffles this sound. Like all those things interplaying was generating the sound, rather than just having a sound this is the sound of somebody rolling a wall over a stone path while you're behind a cart over a stone path while you're behind the wall. And as the sound director or sound programmer said, it's making sounds I didn't give it. That was very interesting, and I'm sure a lot of developers walked away thinking, "What the fuck?" But the reason you give a speech like that is one, to prop up your development team, to give them credit amongst their peers. But two, it's a recruiting tool. Like, there are people in the audience who saw that and said, holy shit, Nintendo lets them do whatever the fuck they want and pursue whatever insane idea they have to solve problems. I would love to work there. And like, so they're when Nintendo put people in front of a camera to talk about it, there's always a reason. And so like for GDC, that would be the reason. Big up your developers, make them feel valuable. Yeah, so when the top talent is looking for a job, they at least give you a call. Because what you want is to have all the top talent stop by your office whenever they're on the market, so you can lock them down and have them be yours. And also so you don't have to hire the next tier down worth of talent who are probably fine, but they're not going to be the people who come up with sound generated dynamically based on the elements interacting. Which, like, yeah, that's how sound works in real life, but you'd have to be a lunatic to try to, like, I'm going to try to replicate that in our physics engine. So yeah, like there is a material value for this. And when they were marketing games, you know, maybe some of it's they just don't need to market games as hard as they used to because the Switch is super popular and a 10 million unit selling game, I don't even think breaks the top 10 anymore.
Yeah, no, it's crazy really how high the bar is, but also probably how they've probably never been more confident in the power of their brands is the
Right.
opposite, because it isn't even just Switch and the number of games that have sold tens of millions, but you've got the Mario movie now to speak directly to these issues of things like Super Mario RPG Remake, Princess Peach, Showtime. Yeah, where it's like, no, it's not just the games, it's the Mario brand is so powerful, and you just feel like that's all you need, and you don't need to kind of complicate it any further than that.
They have 3 theme parks now. Actually, I don't know if the Orlando one's open yet. Just based around Mario. And you have to pay $90 to guarantee that you're going to be able to enter it, despite having a ticket to the Universal Studios. Like they are so premium, they can charge you an additional ticket just to get in on the ticket you've already paid for.
Is this the theme park equivalent of personal seat licensing?
Yes.
Christ.
It is in fact that. Yes, you are correct. I think it also lets you cut the line. But that guarantees you'll be able to ride the Mario Kart ride, which is apparently not a guarantee if you just buy a regular ticket. John, you've been there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh
yeah. I mean that's that's pretty much how it is at every theme park now. It's like you can buy a pass to the park for $200, but if you want to spend an extra $150, you can get the express and walk by all the chumps and get in the special line.
Which is also making the line take longer. It is a really deep,
it's a total racket. Yep.
Nihilistic capitalism of you can pay to make the line worse for everyone else, but better for yourself.
Yes.
But if you don't pay, your experience is now materially worse than it would be if the system didn't exist at all.
Yeah. Yep.
It is some fucking let them eat cake shit going on in Disneyland.
Yeah, I mean, it is the equivalent of turning everything into you have to line up. If you want to get into this bar, you have to line up, but then the VIP line is over here, and they just walk in. It's exactly that.
I mean, it's no different than at the airport, where I went through
pre-check, buddy.
When I went through Atlanta with pre-check the week before Christmas, I was through it in 5 minutes. My travel partners were there for an hour and a half.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, guys, it's only $45 a year. It's only $45 a year. Just pay it.
Yeah.
Just fucking pay it. Just fucking pay it. But yeah, I mean, you're right. They've got multiple Lego sets, and Lego is fucking pulling out all the stops for some of them. These look very fancy, and Lego seems to care a fucking lot. Remember when Nintendo was on also ran Block Company? I can't remember which one it was. Not Lego. I can't remember what that brand is.
Was it
Nintendo Block?
Yeah,
Oh.
yeah. Well, not NB Block. I would love.
Mega Blocks, right?
It was Mega Block. Yeah, there were Nintendo branded Mega Blocks. It's that's fucking garbage shit for poor people. Now we're in Lego land here. It's $60 for a minifig. Get fucked. I would love to see them make a deal to do NB Block branded Lego just for one kit. Just fucking lean into it. Remember that time we totally ripped off your project? Personal, now deeply involved partner? Wasn't that fun?
Well, they made the Mario movie with Universal, so...
Oh, that's true. You know what? You're right. That's true. Oh, remember, in business, there's no long-term enemies. Just the foe directly in front of you today.
And they're making a Zelda movie with Sony, which is a little bit different dynamic, but...
There may not even be enemies today. Yeah. So it's probably all those things is the real answer. It's probably a mix of everything that we talked about. And it's just, it's not a priority for them. And look, you're still buying their games. They didn't need to march the Animal Crossing team in front of a camera in order for it to sell. Let's just roughly estimate 750 trillion copies. It did that on its own. So, All right, next email. I would like John to read this email.
When you specifically say you'd like me to read an email, I always wonder what your agenda is.
Your name was the first one I saw when I looked at the list.
Fine. For now.
That was my agenda. Also, I feel like this one copy pasted wrong, so let me look at it real quick just to make sure. Because like, there's a sentence at the end that looks like it's missing letters, and I want to make sure it's actually fucked up like that in the email, and I didn't fuck it up when I copy pasted it.
See, it's all a setup. I knew there was a catch.
Look, if it was a setup, I would have just let you try to read it and go, what the fuck? But it's not, because I'm trying not to do that.
Maybe you plan to do this, but you're actually thinking better of it, and you're trying to be a better man. Like, you kind of
John. What part of our history makes you think I would ever try to be the better man?
I like to think that
we've
change.
seen like characters like Loki do this thing so many times, like plan to fake danger, save the main character from it, and then, betraying. Like the actual betrayal comes up later. So I can only assume that this, messed up letter here, like that was on purpose. It was planned, and then like the real shit's gonna hit the fan later.
Facts.
All right, so I've looked at it, and the reason it looks fucked up is because there's like a hidden return character in the email, and that when I pasted it into Notepad, that hidden return character was converted to a regular return character. So it just says O at the end of one line, and the next line starts with R. It's just the word or. Otherwise, it's fine.
Mm-hmm. Convenient.
Well, you can go copy it from your inbox, too. You've got the same email as me. You can see the hidden character if you copy paste it. So
I
really,
refuse to.
This is what's fun. Guillaume's over here like getting his news from TikTok instead of just actually going and doing the research. It's fine. You know what? It's fine. I'm only asking you to do the bare ass Aaron Rodgers minimum, please.
Future VP. Reg McFly writes, Dear RFN, recently we have had a couple of Nintendo announcements in the form of Partner Directs and Mario MAR10 days. Please read the former as written. I will do nothing of the sort. We are all aware there is a Switch 2 coming at some point soon, and I know this must be playing into the format of Nintendo presentations.
Are we?
However, with this said, is there a risk that their current strategy of dropping a couple of things on YouTube every month may lead to apathy with Nintendo announcements? Or is it that the Direct/Switch 2 juggernaut is too big? I look forward to the biggest brains in the industry solving this conundrum.
I loon Ford.
Yes, that is a correction I made myself.
Is Andros available to answer this question?
He is.
The biggest
Unfortunately,
brain.
it's just robot Andros, so it's not actually the biggest brain.
It's the trick one.
We took the wrong route.
We took the easy route, which... I mean, look, I think we've talked about this. This is totally unprecedented what they seem to be doing, because again, there was a period during the pandemic where they avoided the sort of really big, long kind of mainline, if you want to use that kind of terminology, direct, because presumably there was too much uncertainty. Right. In that phase, for them to feel confident of like, let's bundle all these big announcements with some lesser ones. That's always the point of these things, is this feeling of like, okay, we want to, we've got some key announcements to make, and then we want to also kind of use the eyeballs' attention that all that's going to generate to get some kind of lesser things mixed in there, get them some extra attention as well, and that's kind of the rhythm that they established over this generation. But the pandemic kind of threw a wrench in that, and now the end of the generation is doing a similar thing in a different way, in that it seems like because the really major announcements that are left out there to make are, going to be germane to the hardware transition. But, that has other factors that you're going to consider with timing, in terms of investor relations, in terms of how it affects the sales of the current stuff that's already, it's hardware and software that's on the market and all that. So it's like, you can understand, like, you may want to hold that for some of those reasons, but then that doesn't necessarily leave you with enough of the really substantial stuff to kind of put to. Maybe you just feel like the problem is, I understand what Red Fly is saying from the point of view of, well, when you just like drop some YouTube videos and, you know, bits and pieces of things, you're not getting the benefit of what I just talked about, right? Where you've got this like captive audience almost of all these people who are coming for the really big stuff, see the little stuff. When you put the little stuff by itself like this, well, yeah, you don't get that kind of halo effect around it and as much attention around it. But I guess the problem is if you try to do a direct where, you know, it doesn't have some of the really, you know, important things like about what's happening in the second half of the year and all this, because you don't feel you can actually talk about that yet, you may sort of cheapen the direct, sort of, to the extent that this is possible. You know, you may weaken, shall we say, its sort of cachet, you know, the kind of sway that it holds with people. If it's like, oh, okay, well, you know, there's not actually necessarily going to be anything that important in these anymore, so maybe they don't become as, like, salient in the discussion online, and not as many people watch them and all that. So you're kind of choosing between those two things, really, aren't you? Do you sacrifice maybe some additional attention for, you know, some of these games that came out in the last couple of months, you know? And you're talking about things that, you know, Mario vs. DK Remake and Princess Peach Showtime, that kind of have that Mario brand over the top of them again. So maybe you feel like, you know what, they'll do okay anyway, you know, whether we're specifically kind of communicating with people through a direct or not, like those will do all right, and we'll keep our powder dry for the big stuff when we're actually ready to share that.
Yeah, I mean, I constantly try to douse this flame when it comes up. People are like, well, since we know Switch 2 is coming any day now. It's like, no, we actually don't.
No, you can't. You can't take anything for granted. I think that's fair to say. Obviously, there's so many things that point towards a transition happening, but how and the precise timing of how that will happen is this. You know, they haven't promised anything. There have been no announcements that it's going.
The next date I would look to is May 7th when they have they issue their briefing for their fiscal year results. Yeah, that's going to be. I think that's their fiscal year results.
Yeah, so. But I mean, like, also last year we got a major Zelda and major Mario game. Like, there was inevitably going to be a quiet period after that. Like, those were their two biggest guns, and they fired them, and they wrapped up a Xenoblade game last year.
Yeah, there's not much else they have out there aside from unless it's going to be stuff that's completely out of nowhere.
The Eternal Metroid project continues on.
Yeah.
Continues on apace. Whatever that pace is, it continues on at it.
Yeah, it has to be on Switch 2 at this point.
I wouldn't say it has to be. But I mean, is it possible? Yes, it could even be a cross-platform thing, because you'd be verging with Metroid Prime 4 into Twilight Princess or indeed Breath of the Wild type of territory here, where you promised it for so long. Do you feel like you're obliged to put it on the system that you originally promised it for, even though in a way it's kind of bled into the subsequent generation as well? Or it could just be exclusively for the current Switch. I think all of those are possible. Again, we shouldn't assume too much about things that they haven't actually confirmed jack shit.
Yeah, and you could always do a bridge release too.
Yeah, and they're not going to release Mario Kart. They're not going to release Animal Crossing because those games still sell. Pokemon, there's a decent chance, I mean, that we get some Pokemon content this year we don't know about yet, but we know there's a big Pokemon game coming next year.
Well, and I guess that's the thing. The other thing about Legends, not Arceus, the next Legends, whatever, A to Z or Z to A, I should say, is that you know, like, on the one hand, we shouldn't assume that it's coming out as early in 25 as Legends Arceus did in 22. But I mean, the one thing is, like, surely 25 will hold a full-on new generation Pokemon, because those things go at 3 years like clockwork.
Yeah,
right? That is not negotiable for these kind of spin-offs or side games like Legends or the remakes or Let's Go.
New toys, new TV show.
They can have their own kind of cadence or whatever, but that stuff for the new generation is just like essentially immovable. So you would think it'd have to be like somewhere in that earlier part of 25, because otherwise it's really going to be getting very close, I guess. But that
competing with itself.
Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl was a matter of 2 months away from Legends Arceus. So I mean, they've done it before, but still,
but that was also a relatively low budget remake.
And that was farmed out to an outside developer as well.
Right.
So, but no, I mean that obviously is a major game that we're looking at for 25 that we do know about, but it's relatively an outlier. And again, Pokemon does sort of march to the beat of its own drum a bit relative to the rest of Nintendo stuff.
More so than than in the past. But I just think the fact that there's a lull here is just kind of a natural consequence of how the schedule ended up landing in 2023.
Well, and even that is somewhat you could track back to the pandemic again, because the pandemic created a lull, and then eventually all the stuff that got shunted sort of backwards, you bore fruit in your material, and it created this sort of relatively dense period of a bunch of stuff happening, and now you're in the sort of down part of that cycle again. I mean, I think you would be looking at that even if we weren't facing the likelihood of the hardware transition the way that we are. But I do think the likely transition element does play a role in their messaging at this point. Why they're choosing to go, no, let's break it up a bit. Let's not do big tentpole direct presentations so much. Let's break things up a bit so that, people kind of get used to the idea that we're going to do things piecemeal that doesn't look too far into the future while we get everything straightened up about exactly the timing, the sequencing of how we're going to handle this transition. Because as we've said, a million times at this point, their record of transitioning successful hardware of late is pretty fucking bad. So, they need to get it right.
And we talked about this in the last email. They probably also don't want to have another Eterna project in Directs. That's not fun, because that means every time you talk about other stuff in front of the press, they then go what's the status of Metroid Prime 4?
And again, I mean, that was born out of desperation. There's no reason why they should be desperate right now. So, just why you walk yourself into that sort of situation voluntarily, I have no idea.
Yeah. So, they seem to have dialed their directs back, and it seems to match with what they've got on the agenda. Yeah, I don't know that it's more nefarious than that. I don't think there's any risk of them. I think if they were running big directs and didn't have a bunch of Nintendo brand, they could put together a direct that largely features third-party stuff. But if they didn't have big announcements in a big direct, and Princess Peach Showtime ain't it, I think that has a bigger risk to burning out the direct format than anything else.
That's exactly what I said. And they've always tried to manage expectations. They've always tried to say, this is an indie presentation. This is a partner direct. They've tried to do that.
Focuses on games for the first half of the year.
Yeah, they put these, because they know even when they do that, you still used to have the thing about where's the new Smash character in the indie world or whatever. You know what I mean?
It's just funny.
It's an unruly audience that you're dealing with, and therefore you really kind of have to try everything you can to shape expectation, because it won't do it completely, but you at least need to try, and to get some of it somewhat realistic, and because that's the point, isn't it? But it's all about kind of a delicate balance of at times stoking those expectations, stoking anticipation, but also not so out of proportion that you can't, to at least some portion of the audience, deliver when you actually reveal things. So it's always a balance, and I just think when you're in this kind of phase, this kind of even leaving somewhat the transition away from the Switch, presumably out of it, just this kind of down part of a cycle almost after the big stuff last year, it just makes sense that balance falls more on everything's shorter term. Short time horizon. We're not talking about anything in the future. So we're not going to get ourselves in any silly situations promising things several years hence, or anything like that. Just focus on the things that we've got to sell, in the meantime. And like I said, and that's the other thing is that, again, if you go too soon with these, what's going to happen next, you might cannibalize some of the very, still quite remarkably robust sales that are still going on now. You didn't have that problem with Wii U. It was fucking dead. There was nothing you could say too soon about the next system. There was like, oh no, well now we won't sell as many copies of Ultra Smash. Like, give a shit. Whereas that, I mean, they are sitting on very, very significant revenue streams that you can shave however many percentage points off now if you don't message things correctly and in the right sequence.
Yeah. Conservatism, at least until they hit a spot where they need to actually come out and push new stuff, conservatism is probably the order of the day for them right now. And with good reason. They're trying to hold their gains. So, yeah. We have 2 emails that sort of deal with the same topic now. So I'm going to let Greg, why don't you read the first one?
Very well. So, one writes, greetings. A question for the artist, better known as James Jackpot Jones, for esteemed Mr. John Lindemann and for the non-Americans.
I would like to point out that is Mr. Lon Jindeman.
Oh, God, I auto-corrected it. I'm sorry, my brain will do that when it finds things that are wrong in so many ways. So anyway, getting on with it. Sony is a too big to fail company, so the Japanese government will save it if it ever gets in danger. But that doesn't mean it can keep focusing on unprofitable ventures. Once they had a thriving TV manufacturing division to now basically losing most of the electronics manufacturing market. With the growth of PC gaming and Sony's abandonment of the Japanese market, will Sony maintain its involvement in video games in the long future? At the moment, it's feasible thanks to the American and European markets, but if ever a Steam Deck-like system becomes as affordable as a console or PC gaming becomes more ubiquitous, I don't think Sony will be able to compete based solely on its high-specs brand, particularly in the US, and especially because Microsoft already has an established delivery service that appears far superior to Sony's, and Steam already is the dominant force in that aspect, while Nintendo is still the toy company that focuses on games and maintains a distinct brand that doesn't rely on being cutting edge. With how Sony, a Japanese company, has mostly abandoned the Japanese market and with PC gaming growing elsewhere, do you think Sony will ever abandon the gaming market or refocus its efforts into a distribution service like Steam?
Do we want to read that? Do we want to answer this one and then jump to the second email?
Well, I would say they're already on Steam, right? They've already been diving into the PC market just like Microsoft has. I mean, Microsoft was, of course, there originally making stuff like Flight Simulator. So they kind of went away from it and then came back to it. But Sony has seen the writing on the wall, and they are now releasing their games on PC. So,
yeah, but of course the challenge with that is you don't get it, you have to pay out a cut. Now,
right, which kind of makes me laugh because Microsoft gets a cut either way. They win either way.
I'm sure Sony's cut to Valve is not the standard cut.
Probably not.
Because Valve wants Sony's games there, and Sony doesn't have to put them there.
No.
They don't have to put their games on PC.
Yeah. So there's nobody in that relationship that really has more leverage than the other. They both need each other.
Right. Or at least their presence both benefits one another. So I could absolutely see Sony getting a sweetheart deal in terms of what the cut they have to pay Valve is.
Yeah.
Because even if Valve's not making money on the sales, which they are, just to be clear, but even if they weren't, even if it was just a break even, all right, you pay us the financial fees, because of course there's financial fees anytime you run a credit card, stuff like that, and the hosting costs, and that's it. That's the whole amount of money you put into ours. And then, of course, whatever marketing that you buy on Steam. Because, of course, Valve sells marketing to game developers. Even if that's all that Sony was paying, Sony's presence on the platform is good for business. Writ large. So, I'm sure their deal is not bad. I'm sure their deal is not the deal that you and I and RFN Games Incorporated, another new brand from the geniuses that bring you RFN every week, is going to get on Steam. We're obviously getting paid to be on Steam because of our importance, but everybody else is going to have to pay like peasants. But I'm not 100% convinced that Sony's too big to fail.
I don't think so either. Now, I would say I think that their video game brand is stronger than Microsoft's.
Oh, no, there's no question.
Microsoft is too big to fail. It's funny.
Oh, yeah.
Their
brand is bigger. Yes, I will give you that.
Yeah, their brand is bigger.
Is their brand better set up for the future than Microsoft's? I don't know the answer to that question. Nobody does.
Yeah.
But their name value is massively higher.
Yeah.
But I mean, from a pure too big to fail means that if your company was in dire straits, the government of your home country would bail you out to keep you alive. And so,
I mean, Microsoft could buy all of Sony.
Yeah,
Microsoft could buy all of many countries.
Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah, I mean, Microsoft is feels like one of the more legitimate applications of that descriptor. Too big to fail. If they did go down somehow, how much of the world economy would they take with them?
Right. Yeah, they're a corporate nation state. Effectively, as fucking dystopian as that sounds, they're a corporate nation state. This is why this came up in the Discord. People are like, why would you invest in Boeing right now? They're having all these problems. And my response was, because the U.S. government will never let Boeing fail ever, 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 ever. Because right now they're still suing about fucking Airbus and the fact they get all these subsidies from the European Union. There's no way in hell they're going to let Boeing fail.
Yeah, just as a matter of comparison, Sony's market cap is 114 billion.
Petty change.
Microsoft's market cap is 3.19 trillion.
This is a fucking insane number.
Yes.
It's just that it's a number in the realm of magical thinking at that point. Now obviously if the company is going under, that market cap won't be 3.9 trillion anymore. But the idea of too big to fail is a statement of you are so central to the economic model of the nation state that you occupy that we will put the people's money into making sure you stay alive. So for the U.S., that was the automotive industry during the Great Recession when they were absolutely flaming out. And there were a bunch of conditions on that, and the U.S. government made back all their money, which was kind of amazing. The banks, which I think they made back their money on the banks too, actually, because they actually put conditions on these bailouts. But I mean, these were essentially if these things go down, tens of thousands of people will lose their jobs, which is just going to cause ripple effects, or the housing market will effectively seize up, or a competitive advantage. If Lockheed Martin had a problem, a competitive advantage that is key to our geopolitical security is going to be opened up, stuff like that. It's not just this would be really bad for business. It would functionally affect the viability of the state. And I don't know that Sony rises to that level. Maybe it does just by the sheer number of people it employs, but Sony's so diversified internationally that maybe individual divisions might get bailed out, but Sony Computer Entertainment, or whatever they call themselves these days, is an American division.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I mean, in terms of their value to the Japanese state, they've kind of deliberately, very consciously diminished that with their, the allocations.
I think the longer term play there though, okay, so what are they doing? I think they're putting some of their games on PC because they're aware that the console space might not be there for them forever.
Well, and I mean, this is I think sort of somewhat baked into the next email that we've got, but surely the issue of the budget of these games in terms of you spend so much to make them that it feels almost completely unthinkable to not try and get every last bit of revenue that you can out of them at some point, doesn't it? So while you are clearly part of the business model for a long time has been having PlayStation exclusives, and that's meant to, drive people to buy the console as opposed to an Xbox or whatever, or play on PC. The fact is, at a certain point, you're like, no, we spent so much money on this, we want to make everything back that we can, and we don't think having it available on PC at some point is so damaging to the console exclusivity thing that it isn't worth realizing that potential revenue. So yeah, I think that's another part. And surely also just they over the PS4 generation and now into the PS5 generation, they've so soundly just completely triumphed over Xbox in the console space. Like how worried are you about that anymore? Like, oh no, people, people are not going to think that we've got as many exclusives, so maybe they'll buy an Xbox now. Like, and of course, Xbox have been buying up all these developers and stuff to bolster, what's available on Xbox and through Game Pass and all that, but it doesn't really seem to have moved the needle with regard to, hardware ownership anyway.
No, I would be more concerned about with Sony is what else do they have outside of consoles? They always talk about, like, in business, they talk about the concept of a profit sanctuary, right? Like, this is the core part of your business that is unassailable.
Right.
And so Sony, for that, it's their console market, right? They're killing Xbox with consoles, right? Whereas Xbox is kind of deflecting that and saying, oh, it's, consoles are cool, but what about the cloud and what about streaming and all of that stuff? And so far, that really hasn't been the case. No one's really cared about streaming games because it hasn't really taken off and it's not really that great. But then again, you kind of have Sony, you see them doing kind of the same thing with PlayStation VR 2. And that is definitely not working.
Yeah, like that to me, these side projects are the bigger danger. Like
yeah.
They're like the little like portable thing that they've released. I guess it's selling okay, but whatever they call that thing, but it doesn't feel like it's it doesn't feel like it's a product that has legs.
Is it actually the Portal or?
It is the Portal,
because sometimes I just think I imagine that name in my head because it kind of looks like it's been grafted together by what was it, Stephen Merchant in Portal 2.
There you go. I was thinking it looks more like it's been in a booth with Jeff Goldblum and got transmuted into a fly.
Telepod accident, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean that's selling pretty well apparently, but
yes.
I mean it's a side project. Kind of,
but it's selling pretty well. But also, it's selling to an established audience that wants that thing, and once that audience is sated, which is definitely a subset, it's probably not going to sell very well.
Yeah, and it's a different flavor of a DualSense controller,
right?
Ultimately,
but like PSVR 2 is a dedicated project that needs dedicated development resources to write dedicated code for it, and Sony ain't doing that. They ain't providing.
No.
But they definitely spent a shitload of money on the thing, and they definitely spent a bunch of time in research and development putting it together and marketing it and selling it. Remember that whole thing about send Jeff Cerny a picture of your ears so he can make his good headphones?
Yeah.
Remember that whole weird fucking thing?
Yeah, but also meanwhile, Microsoft is over here and they kind of look at, Game Pass and streaming and stuff like that. It's probably stuff that they would just do anyways, but they're just kind of, moving around some pieces so that they can use it for Xbox stuff.
It's games as a service.
Yeah.
And
it's
which everything Microsoft is as a service now. It's just as a service.
Yeah.
Office as a service. Compute as a service. Operating system as a service. Service as a service, which is a real thing in a real website. I read from them and I thought, I hate you.
Yeah. They already have cloud infrastructure. That's part of their ongoing business anyways. So even if their game streaming fails miserably, it doesn't matter because they're going to have the cloud infrastructure anyways. They didn't do anything go out of their way. Whereas I think if I recall correctly, Sony for their cloud infrastructure is actually paying Microsoft. They actually use Azure.
Sure.
Which is hilarious to me, but...
That was the whole basis of the US government's case against the merger with Microsoft, right? The acquisition of Activision was just like, well, you already own everything in this space. It just makes it worse. But obviously, in the end... It did happen, I think, again, because, probably a lot of people felt like, it was too big a deal not to happen, wasn't it? Whatever objections anyone in any jurisdictions, like the ones that were in the competition and markets authority over here or in the US, it's just like, no, in the end, they're just going to provide some assurances and throw enough money around of just like, this is happening. Right. And it did.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that might have actually been closer to a too big to fail situation because Activision Blizzard was in a shitload of trouble. Mm-hmm. And like Microsoft was allowed to buy them in part because they were a damaged asset.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I think that the next email is going to get to it. So, Guillaume, you haven't read one, right? Would you read it? Sure.
Aaron from Buckhorn writes, "My favorite show ponies," with a Z, by the way. Mm-hmm. The former CEO of PlayStation, Sean Layden, recently had an interview where he, among other things, talked about the dangers of the rise of scale and cost in AAA games, and how this, in his opinion, is an unsustainable and ultimately dangerous norm for the larger companies in the industry who can afford to do so. With Xbox promising the next generational leap to be the most significant we have seen, his concerns seem substantive, though on current generation consoles, it seems most companies are having to make significant investments in financial risks to make any profit from sales. How can they possibly then afford a new leap in technology? Nintendo, having taken a different approach, has sidestepped the technological arms race completely and has built a fan base that can still support games in all varieties around budget, graphical capabilities, team size, etc. Do you see a further stranglehold on the industry if this is cultivated by the Big N, leaving a handful of AAA/quadruple-A games for Sony and Microsoft to fight over? Do you see companies changing their course because of the unsustainable nature of the infinite growth model they are currently working in? Retech? Is that
regarding tech?
Yeah. Anyway, I don't know. We'd love to hear your thoughts.
Maybe they mean like Ari, like in reference to
regarding.
Tech. I don't know.
Yeah. Regarding tech.
Yeah. Okay. So this has kind of been the whole like, well, wait, games are taking forever to come out, and we have these games that sell many, many copies, but it still isn't enough, and studios get shut down because the game cost a ton of money.
Nothing is new under the sun. I mean, we've been talking about this for 20 years.
But the target gets higher and higher in order to be successful as the influx of cash to make the game work goes up.
I mean,
and we've been talking about this for 20 years, but like in 20 years, okay, I should have looked this up first, but when did The Last of Us first come out? That was on PlayStation 3.
That was 2012, I think?
Yeah, so
2012.
2013,
so so that's a 15-year-old game, and like, so that got a kind of remastered port at some point on PlayStation 4, and a remake on the PlayStation 5. Also a show on HBO. So it's like there's like, multiple bites at the apple. Why do I get the feeling I just referenced something I'm going to regret? Multiple bites at the apple. It feels... You're
fine. That's an idiom.
Yeah.
Who said it though? I feel like, so anyway, whatever. So I feel like we didn't see that much in the PlayStation 2 days, like Sony wasn't putting out Gran Turismo 2-HD, they were putting out, 5 and 6 or sports or whatever.
And all of this, and this is the point, isn't it? I mean, Nintendo were talking about this, maybe not quite 20 years ago, but roughly around that in terms of the whole, as he's referencing the question,
the build up to Wii,
the sidestepping, that they did with the build up to Wii of not making the jump to HD when everybody else was doing it, and so they. And this is the thing. I mean, Nintendo is not anyway. We talked about the difference, which is almost comical, in the market capitalizations between, Sony and Microsoft. But obviously, Nintendo is not even near Sony's level of sprawling corporate monster with all these
which
different
they shouldn't be
tentacles that stretch out to different places. Or we make TVs, we make movies, all this stuff. So
we make Madam Web.
Yeah. So they have not.
I was going to go with we have screen gems. Thank you. We own it.
So this is the point with Nintendo, especially at that time, and obviously they're trying to diversify more, which makes sense for sure. With the theme parks and licensing out for movies and so forth, but especially in the aughts, it's like, well, this is our business, and if this, if we find that we're in some sort of unprofitable kind of space with games, then nothing makes money for us. That's it. We're not going to be Microsoft and just shovel money into a pit for 20 years and it doesn't matter. We actually have to make money off this shit. And so they made that decision to sidestep, which ended up, working out very well, with the Wii and DS, around that time. And then it's had bumps in the road as well, with the start of the 3DS and Wii U and so forth. But yeah, that's the point, really, isn't it? Is that it's always been more immediate for Nintendo. It's always been like, well, there is no option, there's no alternative to let's make money somewhere else. Really, it's like this has to be profitable for us. This has to be that unassailable profit center, and then maybe we can develop stuff down the road. They're sort of very reluctant and tepid, kind of venture into mobile and some of the other things they've done. But this has got to be it. And so, they've been aware of this and they've taken steps and it's gone, quite well. But that's the point, I suppose, because they've been doing that for so long, as again is mentioned in here, but they've kind of cultivated these expectations around it for people that have been buying Nintendo products and following Nintendo for all those years. They know the score. Such an adjustment on the part of Sony and or Microsoft, might be a fair bit different, mightn't it? Because a lot of they've been selling hardware at a loss, to give people the most kind of premium experience, and to try and outdo each other with their hardware and so forth, even though also the hardware is generally converged since, the kind of weirdness of original Xbox v PS2 or even 360 v PS3. I think it'll be a difficult adjustment to make, but you have got to say, if it feels like the path for games, the premium console games, to really be, to really earn the kind of returns that are proportional with what goes into them, is narrowing all the time, and it has been narrowing. And then, the whole thing about Microsoft, when when there was all the speculation about, are they getting out altogether, or what are they doing? What are they going to say about this new direction? Was like, basically, the next generation is going to be the really big leap. I mean, it sounded quite tone deaf, didn't it? I mean, with everything that's going on and just what's going on in their own business, it sounded really tone deaf. I don't know whether that's one of those overcompensation things where it's kind of like, no, we're getting out of hardware. Fuck you. We're going to have the most incredible hardware.
We're going to have the biggest dick hardware on the market.
Yeah, so I think it was probably more that than just that being so badly out of touch. But
Microsoft's big dick console.
What's the kitchen utensil version of the Microsoft's big dick console? If we've had toasters and fridges, what do we get?
Oh God, it's gonna be Microsoft's big dick bread maker. Let's do it. Let's get in there. Big dick blender. We got it. That's the name, the TSI, and the clip all in one. Microsoft's big dick blender.
Of course, it only can blend pre-blended ingredients.
It comes in a pouch like the Juiceros. Yeah,
you can't ask for too much, can you? You got to understand.
I think the other thing that, and Greg, you've hit on it. It's like to just put an extremely hard underline under this. If Microsoft and Sony were to exit the games space as hardware manufacturers, even if they had to pay a commission to some shop platform on PC, functionally, it does not. I mean, it harms those companies, presumably. I don't know. It might not harm Microsoft. Microsoft, it might just be like they stop the bleeding. But if Nintendo does that, Nintendo ceases to exist. Because so much of their profit center is like tied up in, we don't have to compete on price for our software because our software is why you bought the platform. So we know you're going to pay MSRP for this software forever. We don't have to come down on the price. The price is the price is the price. Mario Kart 8 costs as much money as it cost when it came out on Wii U 10 goddamn years ago. Sometimes it's on sale and there's more content in it now than there was then, but it still does. And they can, in part, because they control their platform. They're not competing with 20 other like Mario Kart knockoffs. If you come to the eShop looking for kart games, Mario Kart's going to be number ass one every single time. And that there's material value in that. They also don't have to pay anybody a commission when you buy from them. Like there's value in that to make money on their hardware. Like if you erode all those advantages they have by being their own hardware home, then it weakens them economically in ways that they're probably not willing to compromise on. Beyond that, if they say, okay, we're going to continue to run our hardware business, but also we're going to sell software in other places, which is what Sony and Microsoft's doing, it erodes the fact that you have to buy a Nintendo hardware to play Nintendo software.
No, that's why they had to be dragged kicking and screaming to do anything in mobile, is because they see that as this absolutely immutable, kind of relationship. We cannot have it. The people even get the vague impression that you don't have to buy Nintendo hardware to enjoy Nintendo games.
Because once that slips, once that wall starts to crack, like there's a very real risk that the hardware business gets undermined in such a way that value as a profit center and that value as being the gatekeeper to your own product is eroded in such a way that it fundamentally shifts the financial infrastructure that makes the Nintendo machine go, that let them get through the hard times of Wii U 3DS, that let them be successful when GBA was dragging a barely profitable GameCube along like a boat anchor. Like all these things that function to make the machine work suddenly have to be retooled in a world where they don't control their own destiny. Sony and Microsoft, like even if Sony Computer Entertainment went down, which is a huge part of their company, the company would continue to exist. Like they still produce electronic, like they're not masters of the TV space anymore. But guess what? How many of your friends actually had a Sony TV in their house? Not that many, because they were expensive as fucking shit.
Yeah, they really were.
Sony TVs were super expensive. Sony's always been expensive. You know how many people had fucking Sony Vaio PCs? Remember when Sony made PCs? That was an insane decision because their PCs cost almost like twice as much as anybody else's, and they're just goddamn Windows PCs. Who gives a fuck? Like Sony has other hands in other places, and they could survive. They might have to scale back. Their executives might get fired as a consequence of the games division going down. They probably should if that happens. But, the AAA development thing is a real problem. It's not just that, yes, we've been talking about it for a long time. It's that the number keeps going up, but the price of the games relative to inflation is staying steady or falling. So, like, at some point, that means you just have to have more and more and more and more units sold per game if you're going to make these big expensive games, which means you have to like put more resources in them to make sure that game is the one that everybody pays attention to. And it might be development resources, it might be marketing resources, it might be promotion, it might be like image management, it might all these things, like make sure this is the game that everybody sees and that everybody wants and that everybody buys. And all of that makes it more expensive. So you create this weird like I don't know, invirtuous cycle where it's like to make the game successful, I have to spend more money, but by spending more money, I have to make the game even more successful, and to do that, I have to spend more money. And so you end up with this like these giant projects that cost a shitload of money just to be profitable.
Oh, yeah, and I think the key thing is this: the industry is much bigger than it was when Nintendo first decided to do the sidestepping thing. But for as big as it's got, there's still only so many games that can be a mega hit at $70 or whatever. Like it just, it's not so big that you can have just like loads. Like I was looking at Capcom's like greatest sellers ever, right? And they're almost all really recent, right? Because, like I said, the games industry has been getting bigger. And it's like 3 of them are Monster Hunter, like World and Rise and Iceborne. And 2 of them are like the recent Resident Evil games, like the remake of 2 and stuff. But like beneath that, I don't think anything else that Capcom's ever put out has sold over 10 million copies.
Yeah, because it used to be selling 1 million copies was a wild success.
Which now, of course, some of that there may be some issues there around like, well, how are we aggregating different versions and stuff? And as we know, Capcom love to put out loads of different versions of things and so on. But it's still kind of amazing to think that like Luigi's Mansion 3 has outsold almost everything that Capcom has ever made. It's astonishing, frankly. But also, when you think of a company like Capcom, the history it's got, the powerful brands that it's got that have been turned into movies and all this sort of stuff, and that's how many copies they could sell like this, of games like this. There aren't.
Yeah, and also Monster Hunter World has sold. I read this statistic. It's sold 25% of all Monster Hunter games.
Wow,
has been Monster Hunter World.
And it's probably just competing with Luigi's Mansion 3.
Yeah, so when you think only on one system,
I'm pretty sure
games,
that one it would be more than Luigi's Mansion 3. But still, the point is that really there's just not enough oxygen in the game, as massive as it's got, to support like that. So you're almost like spending shitloads of money to buy lottery tickets to like you're going to be one of the handful of games that's so salient that it will actually be big enough to earn the kind of returns. Because again, opportunity cost always looms large. If you make some amount of money, there's going to be investors and executives there saying, yeah, but we could have made more just putting it in something that's a lot safer. So, that's even if it's not a fucking catastrophe, they're still going to look at it and say, not really, and that didn't do it for, is this really how we want to invest our money?
Well, and that was the thing that was like when mobile games had the gold rush, where it was like, mobile games. Look at this company Rovio made $1 billion in a day in mobile games. Like, yeah, but what that didn't factor in is that like 500 other games came out, flamed out on day 1, and the company declared bankruptcy by day 5. Like yes, like there are successes, and you end up being bought by Sega. So really, who had the worst outcome? Probably the people who now have to deal with Sega management. I'm just going to guess. But there was always this sense of like, there's a finite amount of money in the space, but there's also a finite amount of time. Like people only have so much time to play games. And as games have gotten longer and bigger and more of them have become open world or become online focused games where you play them for a long time, that diminishes the number of games people play. Like, just invariably, because it takes you longer to clear them. It was very unusual for games to be something you played for 50-plus hours in the past. Like, that was very unusual. Now it's like, it's baked into the design. We want people to spend lots and lots and lots of hours with this game because we want to remonetize their engagement. Like, that was the thing. We want to remonetize your engagement. We want to sell you, what is it? The passes. I'm blanking on what those are called now. We want to sell you other
battle passes.
Battle passes, yeah. And other stuff, other buy-ins, because that's how we keep you engaged and continue to make money off of it. But if you're making a single-player focused game, there really isn't a battle pass opportunity there. It's like the game is the game. You sell it and you're done. Unless you're making fucking AAA Clocks, which is a AAA game where you could get monetized forever. Like, there's a limit. And so those games, if you're spending a shitload of money on them, unless you absolutely kill it in terms of sales, yeah, there's a real risk there. And how you diversify to ameliorate that risk is probably what's going to drive what companies are successful and what companies aren't. Nintendo's approach has been to still keep a relatively diverse platform of releases. And we've been kind of making fun of Princess Peach Showtime. But it was probably a relatively low-cost game. Success is probably relatively achievable for that game. And it fills in a release schedule slot. Like, having more diversity in what you offer and less eggs in one basket is probably the healthiest play here, because to Greg's point, you're playing the lottery to a certain degree. You can make an amazing game and it just tank. Like, that does happen.
Or it could review well. It could, it could even sell okay, but you're still probably going to look back on it and say, was it all worth it? Was it actually the returns that we went into it thinking? And you're probably going to say no, because like the bar has just got so high for that.
And to Sony's point, like, your team might still get liquidated because, like, maybe it didn't lose money, but it didn't make money. And like, we're not paying... I mean,
I'm not very familiar exactly with what's going on with all the layoffs and whatnot in terms of the precise triggers. In terms of, I assume it's a question of not meeting projections, and then very much like nation states that aren't the US and therefore actually have to worry about people wanting to buy their debt. You have to make a gesture, right? You have to, so right. if it was a nation state, you would say, oh, well, don't worry, we're putting up this tax, or we're cutting this part of public spending. Might not necessarily be like, that's such a major thing that completely changes the maths of it. But it's like, no, it's okay. We recognize there's an issue here, and we're taking steps. And so the markets that we still want to buy your debt,
being reserve currency, too big to fail.
Yeah,
baby.
You want to talk about too big to fail, but
too big to fail, baby.
But with these these studios, it seems like it's a similar thing in terms of you're not meeting projections, which I don't know if that's an overhang of the pandemic where you had this big surge in revenues and stuff. So and then it's like, okay, well these trends surely will continue. We're all disco stew. There's no way it's going to be anything different than and then when it is different from that, you have to make the gesture to your investor. No, we recognize there's a problem. Costs are getting under control, and especially in somewhere in the US where it is a lot easier to fire people than it is in Japan. Those
or Europe
flexible labor markets, they are the easy way to make that gesture of like that. We got it under control, guys. Don't worry. Keep putting your money in.
It's not a fucking coincidence we had this huge rush of layoffs and shutdowns in February, because a lot of companies report their end of fiscal year their fiscal year closes March 1. And so if for them to put it in their end of fiscal year report and not in their projections report, like what we're projecting for fiscal year 25, for them to put it in the fiscal year 24 report where they talked about the fact that they didn't hit their projections, or where they had to mark their projections down, which are both things that companies in this industry did, in order to include it in fiscal year 24, they had to fucking do it in fiscal year 24, which meant a lot of firings happened in February so that they could be in the FY 24 end of year report in the same document where they said we missed projections, so they could put them in the same fucking paragraph. Profit projections were missed. However, cost adjustments have been made, blah, 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 blah.
We're already fixing it. Consider it fixed already. It's fine.
If they did it in fiscal 25, they'd be in different fucking documents that come out on different days, which means the market would have had time to fucking panic. And this might sound like I'm being incredibly cynical. This is how this shit works.
Well, and again, you're worried about the capital flight, aren't you? You're worried about the fact that if you don't do it and somebody else is doing it, then the money's going to go out of you. It was like, oh, well, they're not serious. They're not getting costs under control. And they're going to go into the other. No, I mean,
look at this very fiscally responsible Sega. I'm going to put my money here.
But that is the thing. So the competitive element of it and the constant competition for capital is very much a part of that as well. But that's the point, I suppose, is at what point you have this sort of wider recognition of like, you know what, like this narrow pathway to the kinds of profits that everybody's looking for, the reliable profits and realistic profits is got so narrow that realistically only so many, games are going to achieve it, and it's just not really as sustainable as, mentioned the EMA, or, a kind of, a broad base kind of platform anymore. When will that recognition set in and you actually start to get some real kind of I don't think it's going to be much more like turning a dreadnought than turning on a dime. I think you'd be talking about a gradual kind of path adjustment unless you're entertaining some really like catastrophic scenarios. But you would think it could. I think it could happen eventually, but I think it will be slow because it's years of a kind of competitive culture, both competing for gamers attention and money, and also competing for investors funds, that have brought us to this place. And like I said, Nintendo obviously were relatively wise to kind of chart a fork off from that road a long time ago, because it's only got harder to get off it, I think, and that's why
it's not clear. Oh, go ahead.
No, that's why I think it will be slow and kind of gradual now.
Yeah, and it's not clear that fork would have worked for anybody but them. Like, there is a certain amount of, they were positioned in a way, like, it had to work for them because Nintendo couldn't afford to make the Last of Us games. It's just not what they have the resources to do. So, like, there is a certain amount of, like, it had to work, so they made it work. I will say, though, that with the new mid-gen launches, there is a little bit of optimism here, and to give some context. If you actually look at what the leaked stats for these things are, it's very clear these aren't, in some cases, they're not giant bumps. Like there's places where it's like, that's a very oddly specific increase in capability. And it's because all of these things are, like, these mid-gen refreshes, the key feature is going to be, like, AI-based upscaling, AI-based resolution stuff. Like, stuff to make the games look better without necessarily requiring a bunch of extra art and a bunch of extra development, like, baked into the hardware. Because the current hardware basically predates dedicated hardware for AI. And, like, there are certain hardware components that, when built specifically for the type of computation that things like upscaling do, are going to perform really well with relatively low power increases, but it has to be, dedicated, designed hardware. And so that's what the big feature of these two is probably going to be, these mid-gen refreshes.
The PS5 Pro, or however they refer to it this time, obviously that's where they, with the PS4 Pro, and whatever Microsoft is going to do with that. And that's the thing, really, isn't it? Because that's why I think people reacted to the Microsoft quote about, the biggest leap for, like, the next, like, actual generational leap, rather than the mid-cycle sort of refresh, if you like. And so, kind of with such incredulity, I think, because so you need even more manpower to make it work, to actually get anything out of this. Like, this is crazy. We're already reaching the point where it's like, no, well, the developers are showing us they can't support more manpower. They're cutting back.
Right.
But of course, like what you're talking about with the mid-cycle refreshes, like, well, we're getting better performance without actually people having to have more advanced tech because it's automated, it's AI. So, like, that at least makes some sort of sense.
We can maybe save money
in the current environment. That at least, it's like, okay, but people will pay, for a more sort of premium experience. People who want the very best, hardware the console hardware can provide. But they can deliver that sort of uptick without placing some kind of additional burden on a development environment that is clearly already overstretched.
Right, and that might actually help with this next generation of, like, the biggest dicked console in the world from Microsoft. Like, there might actually be material value that they offer by leveraging things like AI-based upscaling, or, like, frame generation, or other attributes. Like, I know there's this, when you talk about AI and development cycle lines, especially in creative fields, people freak out and go, like, you're going to replace people with AI. Yes, some people will do that. Some companies are going to do that. That's going to happen. I don't have to like it, but I just accept that it's going to happen in development-related fields too. It's just a thing that's going to happen. We have to be prepared for that and address it. But yeah, it's happened with every new technology. People get replaced in the field they're in by automation. This happens a lot. Doesn't mean we have to like it. It means but it is going to happen. But it's also going to be applied to things like development, where there are components that we're just not going to have to build the same way, or we're not going to have to chase down like every last little bit of performance I can eke out of this hardware that's 5, 6, 7 years old by the time I'm making a late gen system game, because I don't have to do that anymore, because we've got automated things that can absorb some of that cost through other means rather than generating the 4K image. I can generate it at some sub resolution and have it in real time upscaled. And then that lets me protect my frame rate. Like that getting silky smooth frame rates and high resolution, it's not part of like asset generation, although it is in some way. You have to create the textures to go with it. But like the optimization programming, the testing, the re-engineering to try to hit performance targets, like all that stuff takes a shitload of work and money and time. And they're your best goddamn developers. They're the ones who are able to try to find that 1 FPS that every other engineer has spent weeks trying to find, but we're at 58.7, and if we can just get it up 1 fucking FPS, we can put 60 on the box. Like that's your aces. And so being able to avoid having to chase the performance dragon is going to save money. So yeah, like putting more firepower in there might help if you use it for that. But if you use it to go like, what if we did 8K? Well, now you're just making things even worse, like even more materially psychotic. Like you're an addict feeding them the cocaine bar. Like, yeah, this is just all the bar. It's Miami in the 80s, and you're an addict. Have fun. So like there is a certain amount of like developers also need to be responsible stewards of their own resources, and publishers need to be responsible stewards of their own resources, and understanding like where does it make sense to splurge and where does it make sense to save money. Yeah. And maybe they're learning that now, having to go through these painful layoffs.
I always laugh at these companies when they say this is unsustainable. Okay, well,
and then they sustain it.
Well, then it was always unsustainable, and you've been sustaining this supposedly unsustainable model for at least 20 years.
Let me give you an example of unsustainable. Skull and Bones.
Yeah.
That game was in development for a decade. It will never, ever, ever make its money back.
Yeah.
Ever.
I mean, really, like, part of me says the reason why they say it's unsustainable is because really what they're saying, I feel like that is code for we're not able to make enough money off of the money that we're spending. So therefore, we're just going to call this unsustainable and
hope the next executives figure it out.
Right. Like, it's just...
Yeah, I mean, it is kicking the can down the road a little bit. Like, we know this is bad. We're not going to be able to sustain it. Yeah. You don't have to tell us, investors. We're going to figure it out, or somebody else will while I golden parachute.
Yeah, and by the way, now we're going to make ourselves look good by laying a bunch of people off, so the investors think we're doing something. And don't worry, you'll see this again in 5 years when we tell you that it's unsustainable, and then lay a bunch of people off because that's just what we do twice a decade.
I think there will be consolidation, though. Like
there has been. All of those mid-tier developers were gone at one point. They all got shut down.
Until they all got embraced, then executed summarily.
Yeah. I mean, it just keeps happening. But I remember, like, I just always think of, Bizarre Creations, who did like Project Gotham Racing. Like when they shut down during that time period, all of those mid-tier developers got killed off. All of them.
Like, I mean, we just went through a big run of that with Microsoft. Like they a bunch of the stuff they acquired got shut down. Toys for Bob is being run out of people's houses right now. Mm-hmm. Like there is a certain amount of just like I think we're probably headed for a bigger round of it than we've seen so far. I think the embracing has shown the opposite impact of like, hey, if you fuck around too much and just be like, we'll just acquire all of the damaged assets. What if we build our castle out of damaged assets? Mm-hmm. It's like, well, you're stupid if you do that. And it's a very bad plan. And once Sweden's central bank decides that they can't literally give you money for taking loans anymore, it's going to go really poorly, which they were doing. Also, congrats to the Bank of Japan for finally having a positive interest rate for the first time in like 15 years. You did it. We're all very proud of you.
Yeah, well, that's still the nominal interest rate. The real one is way negative because their inflation is way out of... Well, I mean, I tend to say way out of control, but they're not even trying to control it.
No, they're trying to cause it.
Yeah, so maybe it's exactly under control.
It's under control like Blast Core. Yes, exactly. We've gone way abreast here, but like
they're pretty broad questions, aren't they? But I mean, I guess the one thing that it's interesting to me a little bit here is some notion of if this is unsustainable and genuinely so, rather than just kind of as John as mentioned, some of it is like almost like a sort of a buzzword, it's just something you say to see as a performative gesture of like, oh no, we get it, that we've got to control costs kind of thing, rather than truly looking at
I'm just imagining an off-Broadway musical called Unsustainable Business, and it's just people in suits
performing,
dance kicking out to going, it's unsustainable, as they go across the stage with like big bar charts behind them.
But if that were if you truly were going to get to a point of like, okay, well, this is there's some sort of course correction happening or whatever, and it's like, does this, as Aaron suggested, is there capacity for Nintendo to like somehow emerge out of it with more of a market share or something?
It's 100% in Japan.
First of all, in Japan, I mean, they've done it, right? Which goes to one question in the first place, like just like
the war is over.
Sony have just like, I mean, it's kind of an afterthought for them. Which I think it was one that also sent us a question about where Final Fantasy's going and why the sales are shrinking. I mean, that's some of it right there is because
yes,
Final Fantasy, Rebirth or whatever, and 16, like they're on hardware that not that many Japanese people own. So right. I mean that's part of it right there. But to go back to the other part of how much can Nintendo capitalize off of this, I don't think that much really. Again, because that's the point. No. They did make this decision decades ago and have cultivated, these expectations and a fan base that kind of has lived within Nintendo. There've been differences, especially with how successful they've been from platform to platform, but the approach has had a certain continuity of philosophy of not being, the most kind of premium production value, the most bleeding edge technological stuff and all that for all this time, that like that. So everybody knows the score, they're used to it, they've been buying within it, and of late obviously they've been doing very well with that. Some of these players that have been playing on the PS5, Xbox, PC, it just they haven't had their expectations calibrated in that way. I don't know how. I don't necessarily know how gettable they are to just say, oh, how about you start gaming in this, like, I mean, of course there are people who play both, naturally, loads of people, but in terms of the idea that you're gonna like essentially be able to convert like players who hitherto didn't really have an interest in Nintendo, but somehow are up for grabs when there's like more of a bloodletting on the premium end of the dedicated hardware gaming space. I don't think there's much meat on that bone, personally. Yeah. Again, I mean, maybe very slowly over time again, which I would, the process probably will be slow, maybe slower than it should be. But generally speaking, I don't see a lot there for them.
Yeah,
I can see Sony just coming out with, hey, here's our Aunt May, extended Spider-Man universe game. Also, it's not voice acted, so have fun. We're trying to save on voice acting and like the translation, the dubbing in several languages. This is a new thing we're trying here.
Did you just deliberately tie it into Madam Web, or did you not realize you did that?
I did not realize. I was trying. I haven't played the the Spider-Man games on PlayStation 4 and 5, but I know that MJ might have some playable segments or something. So I was trying. Well, what's the next step? I guess.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm just going to tell you right now that Madam Web very strongly hints at Peter Parker's
I've
conception.
read the spoilers,
Yeah.
having no intention of ever watching the movies.
You shouldn't. It's terrible.
Yeah.
But like, it's very dumb. I was also considering my unsustainable business off-Broadway musical where right after the second act, half the audience is laid off and security escorts them out of the building.
Yeah,
it's part of a gimmick musical where half the audience doesn't get to see the whole show.
While they're getting ushered out, the sort of security people are like, "Well, we did warn you."
Yeah.
Half the audience claps.
I mean, I would say what's more unsustainable is making games like Skull and Bones, Marvel's Avengers, and Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League.
Well, yeah, because there's only so many of these service games that people can play. Because if you're playing a service game, you're probably not playing 3 others.
Yeah, and, the game industry now is very much kind of boom and bust, big bets. You spend a lot of money to make a game. But yet
that's the whole problem.
Yeah, well, that's the problem, but it's also the kind of game that these companies are playing, and then they complain when they play it poorly. So I don't really know what they want.
Yeah, but it's a problem also all over the place, right? Like the stupid streaming wars or whatever we want to call it. Like no one's gonna dethrone Netflix. Disney Plus kind of came close for a bit, but doesn't seem like that's going to happen. And now they're cutting back costs, and of course, Peacock and Paramount Plus are not going to.
Yeah, to me,
Netflix is still running on VC money, so there's a certain amount of But
to me, it's kind of World of Warcraft all over again. World of Warcraft gets big. Everybody was making an MMO.
Right.
People only play one MMO, maybe 2 at the most.
Right.
And so you see all of these other MMOs just fall by the wayside or dwindle out and die. And it's the same thing.
Well, and as every service game competes for you to continually put money into it, it means they're going to make everything take longer. They're going to make the games fundamentally worse to play because they don't want you to not be in the game spending money. So it's this weird perverse incentive they have to make the game worse so you play it longer. Make everything take longer. Make everything feel like it's more imperative you do it. Amp up the FOMO to 11 and then push it to 12 because people need a stronger hit than they were getting before. And it makes it harder and harder to actually play other games besides your service game if you want to get all the things. And it
made it viable. It made it viable so that, people could just farm gold or whatever and sell it to people who didn't want to deal with that shit.
Right.
Yeah.
There's a reason games ban that because they don't want it to be that simple. Also, they don't want to create an indentured servant class of people in Southeast Asia being paid $3 an hour to farm gold.
Yeah, I mean,
until Web 3.0, though. Then they wanted to do it.
Play to earn, Guillaume.
I mean, World of Warcraft eventually gave up, and they said, "Yeah, now you can just buy gold."
Yeah,
go ahead.
Just buy it from us.
If you really feel like buying gold, okay, fine.
We'll sell it to you. Here it is.
You can give us money for nothing. That's totally cool.
Yeah, RFN is also pioneering Podcast 3.0 where you listen to earn.
Yep.
You send us your credit card statement and your credit card info. We will definitely put money into your credit card. Definitely. We will definitely not spend irresponsibly. We do need your PIN for if you're sending us an ATM card or your security code if you're sending us a credit card. But it is purely about listen to earn. Just shoot that to rfn@nintendoworldreport.com. That's also where you can send your emails, questions, comments, thoughts, etc., 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 etc. That's where you send stuff. That's to get it in this segment. We did 4 emails. It took us an hour and 40 minutes. We did 4 fucking emails. We are wizards. We did it. We did it. So before I decide if I'm going to proceed from here, gentlemen, what did you have for new business? I don't got anything. I'm still playing Unicorn Overlord, and I promised y'all I wouldn't talk about it till I was done.
Yeah, I'm still playing some Helldivers 2.
Okay. Guillaume?
I played a little to the left. That's what it's called. A little to the left, and something that's unicorn adjacent.
Unicorn adjacent?
Yep.
Oh,
but
no.
Don't get too excited. I'm not going to talk about it too much.
Okay.
I'm just basically going to... Yeah, anyway.
Greg?
I've still got Luigi. I could talk about, but equally I could not. So, save it for another time or whatever. So, yeah, nothing imperative.
I guess I didn't speak much during the emails, so I don't know.
Yeah.
But I don't have to.
What do y'all want to do? Do you want to do it? We can.
Sure.
Okay. All right. We're going to take a quick break here because I need to use the bathroom. I've needed to use the bathroom for like 15 minutes. So I thought this email was going to wrap up a while ago, and we just kept exploring new ground. So we're going to take a quick break. We come back, we'll do a little bit of listener mail, and then we're going to call it a show. So please stay tuned. We are back. We're going to do some new business. And I need to learn to say new business in other languages so I can cue it up in ways to make it extra confusing, because this show only really works when I am an agent of chaos. And to engage that sick desire for chaos, John and I think we're going to sit this week out. We went long on email. And we're going to defer a bit to Guillaume and Greg. So, Guillaume, you didn't speak a ton during the email segments. I'm going to let you go first. What are you up to?
Sure. So it's kind of sad, really. I've been playing A Little to the Left, which is a game that came out a year ago on the Switch. It was probably an indie spotlight.
It was an extremely twee presentation in an indie spotlight, yes.
Yeah, and so it recently made its way to Xbox and Game Pass, and I think that they were touting the fact that if you play it on your phone, through the Game Pass, whatever, the remote
Game
play,
Pass app,
yeah, you can. You had touch controls. I can see now why they touted that, because I have been playing it with a controller, like an idiot, and it doesn't really. It doesn't really work. Like, it's very, very fiddly. Like, it's very much a game where it really just wants you to use your finger on a touchscreen to move around and shove away and whatever the stuff that's on the screen. And that's all it wants you to do. And it's very cumbersome to do that with a stick, and like pressing A, holding A to, and moving the stick around. Like the sensitivity, what do you call that? The dead zone on the stick is I don't know. The stick doesn't really work for this. It just doesn't. So it's very tedious, and also I think I don't love the puzzle design in itself. I'm getting no joy out of playing this game. So why am I playing this game?
Yeah, it's a good question.
It is a good question. It's because, again...
Don't tell me it's rewards. Fuck.
I don't know what's wrong with me. I know I've worked out how many cents a reward point is worth.
Guillaume, please!
I am aware that I could just work a little bit of overtime every week to... fund whatever, like
just
to
drink
get the
one
equivalent.
less coffee.
Yeah, or So I know that it's basically, those points are basically worthless, but I've been earning them at enough of a pace to keep Game Pass,
to
renewed.
Play games you don't want to play, so you can keep getting Game Pass.
I know, but like the worst thing is that they keep
Guillaume
reworking.
Is a personal New Deal project. What is happening?
I don't know. So and like I know that the worst part of this, because yes, it gets worse. Like Microsoft keeps moving stuff around, like keeps devaluing the reward points, of course, and they keep changing the ways that you can earn them. I think it's worse in Canada than in the US. Like they've been
exchange rates.
Yeah, well, they give us fewer points. Like there's fewer ways to earn them, and so that's bad. But also so you can earn points by playing games, which is what I've been doing by playing a game I hate, and so the way it works is that you get 3 or 5. I can't remember at this point. It's almost insulting just how few points you get for playing a game each day on Game Pass. It only works with the Game Pass games. If you bought a game and you play it, you don't get reward points. But if you're playing Game Pass game, you get reward points. And also, once per day, you can get 5 points, which is nothing. It's less than a fraction of a cent. You get 5 points for getting an achievement. It used to be way more, like 50 points, which is also nothing. But now it's like 10 times less than nothing.
Dear Lord, give me the strength.
But if you keep doing that for long enough, if you accumulate 45 daily challenges, so playing a game and getting a reward in it, so you have to, every day, like 1 out of 2 days, you have to get an achievement. Well, if you manage to do that, you get all the reward, you complete those challenges. At the end of the month, you get 1,000 points.
What fucking nefarious thing are you feeding by doing this? Because none of the economics here makes sense. Is there like some fucking Energon cube being powered by your Game Pass transactions? Are they taking your digital data to train an AI that's going to be used to assassinate terrorists? What's happening?
I'm getting that there are some metrics that Microsoft can show around and feel good about.
You are a human guinea pig.
Yeah, I'm not proud of it.
Or you're page 3 on the. We understand that the money didn't make sense this quarter, but we played off the people.
This has really messed up the way that I play games on the Xbox.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Because I'll play a game that I like on Game Pass, like Mortal Kombat 11, which I realized after I bought it that it was on Game Pass. So Game Pass, very, very useful,
Microsoft's
apparently.
furious because I don't get to count you on the Game Pass stats for that game.
No, but they do. They do. Like, it counts as the Game Pass version somehow. But yeah, so I'm playing Mortal Kombat 11. I get an achievement. What do I do? Well, obviously I have to stop playing. Otherwise, I might get another achievement. And that other achievement is not going to work towards getting me that 1,000 points at the end of the month. So clearly, I have to move on to playing something that wouldn't give me reward points. So from there, I'll start playing a game that's not on Game Pass, and I'll make some, or I'll pick up the Switch. And,
what you're saying is you consider at this point playing games that are not on Game Pass a waste of your time.
You already have a job.
It's like basically that's the thing. So playing games on Game Pass is like now a second job, a very low paying second job.
An exceedingly low paying.
And then once I've gotten my little, achievement, I've gotten my 5 reward points.
I didn't realize that this new business would be an intervention, James.
Guillaume is getting paid.
I didn't realize that.
Guillaume is getting paid less than an 11-year-old working in the mines between World War I and II right now. It's just insane.
Oh
well, yeah.
We need his
I don't
little
know. It's all
fingers
worth
to
it
get
in
in
the
there and
end
pluck
when
the
I
coal
end up
out.
getting a free month of Game Pass that allows me to keep working in the Game Pass mines.
I just feel like we're having the conversation. No, I sleep in a regular bed with my wife.
So how many points do you have now? And what are you working towards here? Are you working towards a gift card?
Well, that's the thing. I make so many points. I'm just swimming in points. So I need, I think, 10,500 points for a month of Game Pass. I've easily gotten that. So that's auto-redeem.
Good job.
But then, like, 17,000 points gets you a $25 Xbox card.
How many points do you need in order to get the Big Dick Blender?
I don't know, but one $25 Xbox card might buy me 2 MK1, DLC characters.
There you go.
So if I want to get John Cena and his, like his show, whatever what that was called, the DC Comics thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, like
so pretty much you're enjoying min-maxing Game Pass rewards more than you are actually playing any of the games on Game Pass.
Outside of
for the most part,
the enjoying part,
What if you get rewards for every degree of coldness you add to your drinks from the Xbox fridge? Will you buy an Xbox, not actually a refrigerator?
I'm not interested in material rewards. Like
but the refrigerator accumulates points for cooling objects. So as you put more warm objects in there to cool them down and get more points.
Right.
It's very efficient. I don't understand the economics of their rewards program, though, because I can't even figure out how to redeem shit, let alone put together a fiscal campaign to finance the continuation of my business practices. Like, I'm functionally, I don't understand like why this program exists, because it seems like it's designed to be unsustainable.
Well, we haven't gotten into the fact that every day I play my little bejeweled clone on the Xbox on the Game Pass app for 50 points. And also, because I have more than 7 friends in my Xbox friends list, I also get points for that daily for some reason. And I also have the Bing app. And so every time I can check in, I touch this thing, and like there's, increasingly more points gotten that way. Anyway, I do all the things. Or
I
almost
only have
all the things.
1,900 points. I don't think I can do jack shit with them. I don't even know how to reclaim them.
Well, it's on the Xbox itself. Like there's the rewards app. That's Yeah, so that's pretty useful.
You can't do anything from the phone app.
No, well, you can.
You get
Eventually,
points,
you figure
you get
it
points
out.
for logging into the phone app. I can tell you that.
Oh, okay. All right. Yes, I just got 5 points. I am 14% of the way to 1 month of Xbox Game Pass Ultimate.
Excellent. But you can also get like a $5 Xbox card. But watch out, because they when you claim them, they expire after 3 months. So you got to make sure that you've got something to spend it on.
I can get a gift card to Microsoft Solitaire Collection Premium Edition for 1 month.
Yeah, or you can rent Madam Web at last on your Xbox.
Don't you fucking threaten me, Guillaume Fayette.
So yeah, a little to the left.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a weird little puzzle game that's not exactly what I'm looking for, and it's like I don't know if it really...
It depends. As a gateway drug, it's exactly what you're looking for.
Are you looking for points?
No, well, it's well suited for the point scheme, because like it's got easily planned in advance kind of achievement steps. Like you do this thing, this many times, you get an achievement. Okay, so like you basically you can. It's one of those games where it's easy to know that, well, I can just play this for 5 minutes. I'll get my achievement and get out. Anyway, so
it's funny though, because at least you're more financially minded than the people that are just going after achievements. I never really understood those people who are like, I am going to download this crappy game just so I can get the 1,000 achievement points.
Right. I don't do it for the achievement points. I do it for the reward points, which are almost as useless. I don't know. But just to speak to the game a little bit, like it's a puzzle game where it's, the puzzle is figuring out the pattern that the developer wanted you to see, and sometimes like that works well, and you can. But it's been pretty rare where when I felt that a solution was both not immediately obvious but also rewarding to eventually figure out. Like usually it's either like, well, this is, blaringly obvious. I don't even see the puzzle here. You just want me to put these pencils from shortest to longest in order. This is not a puzzle. It's nothing. But then there's other times where it's like I look for the hint and I'm like, I never would have figured it out. Like this is not. I guess this is a puzzle, but like there was no indication that what you wanted from me was even possible for me to figure out. So, yeah, like I haven't found satisfying puzzles in here, basically. And yeah, as I said, like it's not great to control with the stick with a controller. So
yeah,
I guess
it
I would not
very
recommend
touch
it.
oriented.
Yeah. And like there's the promise, like because in their Twee trailer that you mentioned, like there's their cat is the developers I think live together. They've got a cat, and the cat is heavily featured and is heavily featured in their studio's identity, I suppose. But also it's in the game a little bit, or a cat is in the game and like it swipes at stuff sometimes, occasionally, while you're trying to order it.
Just get a fucking dog. Just get a fucking dog.
And but yeah, like it's not. It's kind of cute, but it hasn't played that much of a part. Like maybe less than perhaps it should have. Like because otherwise, this game, I don't know. Like there are some games like what was it called? The game where you were basically boxing stuff up or taking stuff out of boxes rather. Unboxed?
Yeah.
No.
Unboxing,
I think it was.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So that was fun because there was kind of a logic to figure out, and you felt like you could figure it out. Like it was both challenging and fun. It was telling a story. This game, though, I so many times I feel like this is not really telling me a story. It's just asking me to put the round peg in the round hole and the square peg in the square hole, and there's no that's it. Like sometimes it will be, I guess, like it shows you a bunch of tools and what is meant to be a wall with nails on it, and like you're supposed to figure out how to hang the tools on the nails, as you would like in a tool shed, whatever. Like, but it's yeah, it's not great. Like does that sound enticing to you? Like, oh yes, I
don't like cleaning up my own house.
Yeah, so that's the thing. Yeah, that's what you're doing in this game, but you don't get the satisfaction of a clean house afterwards. You just get, I guess, reward points if you're me.
I don't feel the satisfaction of a clean house after I get it. I'm just like, thank fucking God that's done.
And the other game I've been playing, and so, James, I promise you this would be unicorn adjacent.
I swear to God, if it's My Little Ponies, we're going to have a fight.
No, I've been playing Ogre Battle.
Oh.
March of the Black
Okay,
Queen.
okay. No, that's good. That's good. Why?
Yeah.
Because
I
I
can never
it.
predict what Guillaume is going to play these days anymore at all.
I'm very curious how we got here.
Yeah, so am I.
Well, there's this program called Enix Points, and no, I'm kidding. I
must say that's not true.
That's yeah.
So the so I had bought this, like in the great panic of the Wii shop being closed.
Yes.
Like you end up making choices that you regret. Like I don't know why I thought that was my last chance to get Sonic 3 and Sonic and Knuckles.
I took a trip to Las Vegas with Sonic, and then Knuckles came along, and I have regrets.
Sure. But yeah, like there's a bunch of games on there that I'm like, oh, like why did I panic buy Gold Patrol? I don't like that game. It's not a good sequel to Zombies Ate My Neighbors. Also, Gold Patrol literally is on the Switch. Like it's got its own, this stuff gets re-released. So there was no need for that panic buying, except for Ogre Battle, it seems, because Who has the rights now?
Square
Square
I
Enix?
would guess Square Enix has the rights to March of the Black Queen. The Ogre Battle 64, fuck if I know.
Right. But that came back on the Wii U, didn't it? The 64 game. But not March of the Black Queen, the Super Nintendo one.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, so I'm playing it on the Wii mode on the Wii U. That's fun. That's kind of a blast from the past. But so I'm playing this because I had been interested in checking it out ever since I saw it in Nintendo Power in the last few final days of the Super Nintendo. The game looked cool. It's got some striking character portraits, like you that look good in magazine stills. So that's basically my logic for checking it out. Ogre Battle 64 kind of looks like shit. So I was never
character portraits aren't bad, but yeah, the 3D models are rough.
Yeah, so I was more tempted by the Super Nintendo game, but yeah, so I've played through just like the first 2 levels, and by the first 2 levels, I mean the first level where it's not even level, like it's basically there's one battle in it, but like really you keep going back to this one guy, to this one quote unquote boss, and like he shoves you away and is like, well, go check over there. Oh, congrats. This is how you find a secret town or a secret church somewhere. And then like you try to battle him again and like, nope, like here you're going to learn how to, get a second unit out, etc. And then finally you fight him and it's like, it's not much of a battle. So, and yeah, so I did the second level. It's more, I guess, what I can expect from the rest of the game, but it's still handing me the little tips about what is this about, like what does what here. You go to the church, you can revive your characters. You go, you can. Anyway, it's still teaching me the game. So I feel like I already played a couple of hours of it. I got basically a taste of what this game is like, and that's probably going to be enough for me. I'm not super into strategy in the first place, but this is a lot of micromanagement, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Lots of menus, lots of... this being the first game of the series and the first, it's on the Super Nintendo, there's just no easy way to do the things that it wants you to do. You don't get all the info of all the characters and your units. Your units can be up to 5 characters.
And it's Genesis for the ideas here, too. So, like, it's very early.
So you have to select the unit, then select individual characters to see their info, their stats, but you don't see even all their stats on one screen. There are 2 screens. And like if you want to equip them with something, like you have to back out of that stats screen and you have to go to the items screen, menu, equip items menu, select the unit again, select the character again. Anyway, and after I did that, after I equipped a unit with a sword, I couldn't see how to take it back from him. So, I was like, well, maybe there was another more suited character to give the sword to, but then I couldn't undo what I had done. The game, sometimes you can press select to bring up some information about stuff, and sometimes you can't. So that's annoying. Like you have to try it. Yeah, like you have to try it, and then like when it doesn't work, it's like, well, I guess I don't need to know what these tarot cards do. Or if I do want to know, I need to press the menu button of the Wii menu button and go check the operations guide, and then like there's a page on there that tells me. I guess I could print it out. There's always that. I could play with an iPad next to me, but that's something that I was trying to avoid doing. So I feel like I don't want to do all this micromanagement, and I might as well just if I'm going to play with a guide next to me telling me exactly what to do to win these encounters, I might as well just watch a playthrough on YouTube. Like that's basically the same experience. So numbers going up when it's some reward program that's underpaying me for my labor, good. And rewards, points, numbers going up in a strategy RPG that's well regarded and everything is bad. I guess that's my conclusion here.
What if the numbers going up in the strategy RPG caused you to earn real money?
Well, clearly, like how much money are we talking about? Because if it's too much, I'm walking away.
Well, it depends on what your Destin Ferota is going to go for on the market. I think he's actually from the first game, and he's cameo in the second.
If it gives me just cents on the hour of labor, I'm in. I'm hooked. But if we're talking more than that, forget about it.
If it leaves me anything but disenfranchised, I'm out.
You know what? I'm down for that. I'm down for the Disenfranchisement Express coming soon to you. You could just get addicted on the Microsoft app.
My hope, and so I bought the Ogre Battle Tactics Ogre on the Switch. I'm hoping I like this more because it's more similar to games that I actually like. So
yeah, no, I get that. Like it's wild that the same team created both of these genres effectively.
Yeah,
and then one just went into the chiller afterwards. It was like, yeah, we invented two distinct genres based on this concept, and then one just goes away. I do wonder if the people who worked on the Ogre Battle games, when other people did them, so when that PS2 game that I've mentioned a bunch of times came out, or when this
Soul
game,
something.
yeah, Soul Nomad, Soul Nomad, and the World Eaters, when Unicorn Overlord comes out, if they watch it and they're just like, man, we could have made the next one of those. Or if they're just fascinated that somebody else is even trying, if they're like, all right, well, what are you guys going to do with this idea? I'm very
choice 3 is they're probably heavily medicated somewhere.
I don't know. I think they still work for I think one of them still works for Square Enix. There's no escape, man. You're just stuck there forever. Well, that was that was certainly a new business segment.
Yeah, like I'm still playing Mortal Kombat 11. I've played matches where I have seen fatalities, and you can punch someone in the back of the head so that their eyes just fly out, or like the front of their face leaves the rest of their head. I don't know how to say this. Like shoots out, and their brain also follows. Like that's how hard
rapidly
you can
disassembled.
Punch yeah, basically. Like so that's pretty cool. That I actually enjoy.
Guillaume enjoys removing your face and brain.
Mm-hmm.
Surgical Guillaume.
Sure.
All right. Well, Greg, take us home.
It's all right. We could just put Nicolas Cage's face on, and it'll be exactly the same.
Well, as long as the face ends up on John Travolta at the end,
yeah,
fine.
No other differences.
Otherwise, it's a waste.
So not a great deal to talk about. I played a bit more of the side order stuff with Splatoon 3. Funnily enough, because we were mentioning when we had the closing music from the Virtual Boy pinball game, Galactic Pinball. How often do you get Virtual Boy references? It's not that often. Well, a piece of gear in Side Order is a Virtual Boy reference, actually. It's kind of like you've got a headset, but that's not like a one-to-one recreation of the Virtual Boy headset or anything. It's kind of like merged with like DJ headphones or so, but the actual it's got kind of protrusions to the side that are quite clearly the Virtual Boy controller kind of snapped in half and glued on, a bit like that PlayStation Portal.
Oh, God.
So it's like, no, that's a Virtual Boy reference. I've caught it. So, yep, that's they do still make them, even though they've passed on the opportunity when 3DS was around to reissue the games in a format that would have been quite suitable and so forth. They haven't completely erased it from their history. And also, side note for Side Order, the plot of the game, not desperately important or anything, but it is it has far more overlap with Xenoblade 3 than I ever would have imagined was possible for these two games. But I guess they should be inextricably linked, considering they swapped release dates. But yeah, apparently they wanted to make the sort of the story somewhat interchangeable too. But yeah, the only thing I could otherwise mention, a little while back, and I kind of picked it up a bit more. For mop up a few things after I was I might go back to side order for a few runs here or there, but I'm kind of mostly done with it now, so I kind of went back to this that I'd been playing beforehand, was a run through a new Super Luigi U. Because we are 10 years removed from the year of Luigi, never forget. That year, a very, very different year.
A very long year.
For Nintendo's commercial fortune. Certainly it was hard to imagine Luigi's Mansion 3 outselling virtually everything that Capcom ever made back then, when the year of Luigi was one of Nintendo's worst commercial episodes in their time in the video games industry. But I always enjoyed this, New Super Luigi U. It was pretty cool on the pretty cool DLC. I mean, I like the base game as well, and this obviously has like the a lot of the basic characteristics of that in terms of the same world map, the same like bosses and everything. But it had the shorter levels with the kind of shorter time limit to go with it. It had the Luigi specific physics, which of course you can play with Luigi in regular New Super Mario Bros. U or whatever else, but he doesn't control any differently there, whereas he does here. And I think this is probably the best implementation of that you've seen in a 2D game, because when you play, a New Super Mario Brothers U like this, it's got the kind of real estate for those big jumps to still kind of work. Like, you know what I mean? Like, if you're playing one of the, you can use Luigi's physics in, say, for instance, the GBA version of Super Mario World. It's just difficult to want to do huge jumps into the unknown when the visible play area is so bloody small. And so his ability to float longer in the air and do it, and he's more slippery and stuff, like, it's just not as useful. Whereas here, where he's like nice and small relative to the screen, it kind of it works better. It's like, no, I can do like crazy jumps and still clear things, and still kind of bring it back under control at some point. So I always like that about it. But yeah, just felt like playing it, I guess, because it had been 10 years, and obviously kind of having played Super Mario Bros. Wonder kind of whetted the appetite a little bit to kind of go back and see, how different was this, really, and kind of how much progress or not did they make. And obviously visually it's interesting, because I was playing it on Switch, the deluxe version. And so I had two competing things going on. And on the one hand, the fact that playing it, especially on the Switch OLED, it's like, oh, this looks way nicer than I remember playing almost exclusively off TV on the gamepad, the higher resolution, the much better colour reproduction, all that.
Oh, yeah.
But then equally, you also notice, like, yes, this has way less, like, panache than Super Mario Bros. Wonder, which I just played on this device, a matter of months ago. So it's this simultaneous, like, it's better than I thought, it's worse than I thought at the same time. And I couldn't really reconcile which sort of prevailed, because definitely, there are things that just seem very, especially, in the increased clarity, you kind of just see how sort of, workmanlike it all is, by comparison with the kind of flourishes that they put in with Super Mario Bros. Wonder. But fundamentally, still a very enjoyable game, especially because it's so quick to go through, and it's because you can like skip like multiple worlds by finding a secret exit. So if you just want to kind of run to, fight Bowser and kind of beat the game, which I generally do, because in these games, you don't actually have the opportunity with the, New Super Mario Bros. Games to save anywhere you like. So,
right.
It's just that like castles and the boss of each world or whatever. So it's kind of like, but once you beat Bowser, ostensibly the game is solved, even though there'd be lots of secret levels and stuff. Then you can save anywhere. So I was like, let's just do that as fast as possible so I could save anywhere and then go from there.
That's a weird concession. Like, why not just let me save it? Like, what? Okay, sure.
I'm sure it's just kind of, trying to reinforce, because especially the original New Super Mario Brothers is like, oh, we're going back to the good old days of the original Super Mario Brothers. And obviously, like with that, lives were precious and everything. So maybe they just thought they had to have some kind of friction in there that wasn't going to be, to the same degree as the classic Super Mario Brothers, but, just something in there that made you feel like you've got to complete a few levels in a row to kind of actually like bank progress. But again, most of the time they were so generous with lives that you could just keep, especially in 2 because of the surplus of coins, that it didn't really matter a great deal, to be fair. But no, so quite a quick playthrough at first. You really kind of did enjoy it because it definitely, especially with this format of having the shorter version of the levels and so forth, that you would have had in the base game. It feels kind of snappy, and it's got a little bit of extra challenge to it compared to the base game, which itself was more challenging than Super Mario Bros. Wonder. So it kind of put a little bit of bite back in, playing a side-scrolling Mario for me, coming off Wonder. But everything's so fast that it's not a big deal. And, it probably has a few areas where, I'd give it the edge, like the bosses are not amazing, but they are better and more varied than the ones in Super Mario Bros. Wonder. For instance, it's kind of a minor point, but, I would give it the edge on that. But yeah, in the main, it was a fun experience in itself, but also kind of made you appreciate what they did with Super Mario Bros. Wonder for sure. Because visually, it was a decent, somewhat of a upgrade over like the Wii game, but it's not really about the amount of detail per se. It's more about the personality that's lacking, which you see very, very clearly with this. And I did then sort of end up going through and just, again, because it's so snappy and because I've still got some recollection of some of these things, like doing all the Star Road stuff in this. And what it reminded me of is that they don't have the last level as like the ultimate challenge in New Super Mario Brothers. It's like a celebration thing. It's like,
really?
Yeah, it's like Super Mario World, which this game, is patterned on quite a lot. Where in Super Mario World, there's some really tough levels in the Special World, but the last level is more of a celebration, where it gets spells out in coins like you are a super player or whatever.
You did a good job.
That is this level, last level in Luigi is that. Like, it's just, there's like a little like cardboard cutout that you put your face in and stuff. It's silly. It's trifling stuff. So the real last level, which isn't even like from one of the very last world, is the fire bar sprint. And it's like, as soon as I started playing it, it was, I remember this. Yeah, it's like that is quite challenging, even though it's not some like crazy long thing like the sort of final challenges of Super Mario games have become, really sort of starting with Galaxy 2. It's quite short. It's just really hard. You've just got like this series of fire wheels that you need very precise timing and to maintain a very consistent pace to make it through if you're going to survive. But it has a really sort of devious twist if you're trying to get everything, which is there's a star coin, the third of the star coins in the level is in plain sight. It's, it's not hidden at all. But basically, you must be Big Luigi to get it because it's hidden behind blocks that only Big Luigi can destroy. And that is so much harder because obviously, you can give yourself like the best possible power-up, right, to start the level, which means you would then go, one hit would take you down to Big Luigi. And one more hit would take you down to small Luigi. But of course, the thing about being the smallest Luigi is you've got more margin for error. You can't get hit, so easily anymore. So that's the thing. If you're going to complete the level at all, it probably will be as the small Luigi that's going to fit in between these gaps in these wheels of fire. But if you want the third coin, you've got to be able to get there as the big one, and that is tough. I was like, it's all come back to me now. 10 years ago, this was like the last thing I did in the game, and it was really hard. But because it's so short, I just sort of kept doing it and eventually I did it, probably mostly by fluke, but it happened, and once again I had all the star coins, so it was pretty good. It made me think, a DLC like this for Super Mario Bros. Wonder would have been amazing. Like, if you could have had something that ups the challenge and is like, I think Wonder's pretty snappy, isn't it? I think snappier than like the base new Super Mario Bros. U was. But, so maybe you can't make it, make the same kind of adjustment quite, but still maybe in some kind of proportional terms, it's even kind of snappier, but with more challenge. I think it could have been amazing, but it doesn't. I don't imagine it fits the current circumstance. We already kind of talked about that in the first segment, and I know the other episodes. That the developers are needed elsewhere, and that's not gonna necessarily happen unless maybe this gets Super Mario Bros. Wonder gets a deluxe re-release one day, and they decide to add something, to it. The last thing that I'll say about it that really caught me off guard, though, is they changed something about the controls, which I don't think is in any other sort of iteration of New Super Mario Brothers. Not in Mario Maker 1 or 2, and not in the portable games or anything like that. So, New Super Mario Bros. Wii added the little twirl in midair, right, which kind of extends your jump. And you did that mostly, I can't remember what the alternatives were, but, you had your Wii remote sideways and you shook it to do that, right? And then for whatever reason, that twirl, I don't think was even in New Super Mario Bros. 2, but they brought it back for the Wii U game. But here, it works differently. So it's like, normally I would only do that twirl by doing a shoulder button. Like, that's what I've got used to doing in, like, the new Super Mario Bros. Style in Super Mario Maker, in the Wii U game. But now, it's if you press jump again in midair, it does it. And that really messed with me to start with, because say, for instance, you're going to hit an enemy and jump off it, get that extra boost by pressing B as you hit the enemy to get, more air. Well, like, if I pressed it a little too soon, I did the little twirl. And then I would, drift away from it and miss it and stuff. And I was like, it wasn't always like this, was it? I'm not going crazy here. So, yeah, I had to get used to that, because I think the reason why they've done it is so that, like, if you've got the squirrel suit or that, the Peachette thing, where she gets, Toadette turns into Princess Peach's clone and has a similar jump to the squirrel suit. It's so it'll let you both do a twirl without using that extra jump that gives you. But it just kind of because I've played this game before. It really messed with me, like, why they did this. And I had to go back, and I went back to, like, Super Mario Maker 2, like, did they keep it that way in that? And they're like, no, that's not how it worked in that either. So, yeah, a little bit of a weird change, that. I guess I can see it, like, why they did it, because, like I said, that way you can still manipulate your jump as, like, Squirrel Suit. Without using the extra one until you actually want to use it by putting them on separate things. But that's pretty much. There's not much else different really than that extra character and all that. It was just packaging it together again in this way. And I don't know whether I'll go to regular new Super Mario Brothers U, the Mario base campaign anytime soon, because I kind of had my fix for a while, I think. But it was pretty good.
Cool. All right. Well, that's going to do it for the show this week. Greg, what is our music to close us out?
Well, I believe you already mentioned it earlier on. It appears to be the end for Smash Spirits. We are within a matter of an hour or so, I think, about to see the last potentially update of the Spirits with Princess Peach Showtime and Super Mario Bros. Wonder Spirits. What number did you say it was going to leave us at?
I think it's like 15, 30 9 or some shit that's going to make me really upset.
I also read somewhere, I think that it's meant to be the 99th like Spirit event or something. And again, that's like why not do 100? But there you go.
Yeah, why not? Yeah, just do one more. All right, let me get you the exact number we're going to end at. We're going to end at, oh my God, the list of spirits is so long. It's so long. We're going to end at 1529, I think. Which is just, why?
It's a little bit weird. But yeah, apparently, seemingly anyway, this is going to be it. So I thought, well, we need something for the vast Smash soundtrack to kind of bring an end to all this this age of spirits. So what I'm going to go with is something that's I thought also had to tie in with Princess Peach. And I think this track actually began from Super Smash Bros. For Wii U. And it's called the Super Mario 2, Lost Levels medley. So the thing about that is you might say, well, was there any original music in, the Lost Levels, Super Mario Bros. 2 for Super Players or whatever? And I don't exactly think there was. There wasn't really any, themes that they put in that for the Famicom Disk System game that were entirely original. But there was one thing that was definitely embellished, which was the theme that you get when you complete the game and rescue Princess Peach. So it was there originally, I think. But what they did with Famicom Disk System was kind of embellished it because it had that extra sound channel, which they didn't tend to use in gameplay. But for things like the intro to Zelda 2, where game is, they would use that extra channel, not for sound effects, but actually for the sound. So it has like a more full featured kind of version of that theme, and it has like a chime and stuff. So I guess that's why this Super Mario Lost Levels medley, while it has other stuff in there, like, underground, underwater, just the stuff that was already in Super Mario Bros., it heavily features this Princess Peach motif, because that was the one bit that was actually kind of new to that game. So I thought it ties in with Princess Peach coming out, and also it is used as the credits on Smash Bros. When you complete the classic mode with Mario. And of course that Princess Peach motif would go on to be in Super Mario Bros. 3 when you rescue Peach there, and Super Mario 64 when she emerges from out of the stained glass window. But I'm not sure how much they've used it since.
Okay. Well, all right. On that, it is time for us to go. Bye, everybody.
Later.
Bye.
Bye-bye.